So good morning, good evening, good afternoon. We have a number of participants joining us today. So we're just going to wait about 30 seconds or so to ensure that everybody has a chance to call in, as we have participants from all over the world. And so for those of you that may not be familiar with Zoom, let me first begin by introducing myself. My name is Daniela Coleman. I'm the Director of Admissions and Recruiting at SAIS Europe. I'm joined today by my co-host, Bianca Belli.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bianca Belli. I'm the Admissions Coordinator at SAIS Europe.
And we are delighted to be welcoming you today to the SAIS Europe Open House. We realize that for some of you, it's the first time that you're using Zoom. So if you're not familiar with Zoom, we welcome you to submit any questions in the Q&A box, which is located in the middle of your screen. There is also a chat function, and this is where Bianca Belli will be monitoring the chat function. So if you have any difficulties with audios, or if you have any letting us know where you're calling in from, this is a great way to let us know. We will also be posting a number of links throughout the session. So definitely I would encourage you to consult the chat box regularly. And for those of you, everyone that is registered for this session is being recorded. So if you're not able to join us for the full 3 hours, don't worry. We'll obviously send you the session afterwards. We have a large number of people that are calling in. We expect over 200 people today. We're currently going to be interacting with you. It's a pretty interactive session, but the best way for you to send us questions is in the Q&A box. And so before I officially welcome the Director of SAIS Europe, I just want to go through a little bit of housekeeping, a little bit of the agenda for today. If you're curious to see what the weather is like in Bologna, feel free to click on the link on the bottom right-hand corner. But today's session is going to be about 3 hours. We will have a morning session that will focus on the faculty of SAIS, particularly our resident faculty that will be introduced by Director Plummer. The faculty will be presenting on very specific questions, but this will be followed by an interactive question and answer session. So this morning session is a great way for you to get to know what our faculty teach, get to know a little bit what it's like to be a student at SAIS. If you have very specific questions about the actual graduate programs, the credits, the specific courses, that is something that you can actually address to Bianca and me during the admissions panel. But of course, our faculty are happy to talk about the classes that they teach, and they are there for a resource for you. At about 10:30 a.m. or 4:30 p.m., depending on what your time zone is, we will have a little bit of a break. We'll then go into a presentation from the Career Office, followed by a presentation from our Director of Student Life, and then concluding with the, obviously, presentation from both Bianca and myself. At the end of Open Day, I do want to also put in a plug, and I'll have Bianca put in the chat box. We do have an evening seminar series. It's actually a roundtable discussion on anticipating global challenges. The moderator for that panel this evening is Professor Jones, who's also on our panel this morning. So if you are interested in joining that session this evening, you're more than welcome to. It is a separate Zoom link. So for those of you that want to join us for that, you'll actually need to register for that. So we have a video about SAIS Europe. It's about 3 minutes long, and I'm happy to share it with you. And then after which I will formally introduce Director Plummer.
At SAIS Europe, we have a global community in which we are able to study emerging international issues.
Having so many people from so many different countries, from so many different backgrounds, makes every day enriching academically, because I'm always learning, even when I'm not trying to.
I also chose SAIS Europe for the international nature of the class cohort, as well as the faculty and staff.
Here the teachers come from all over Europe.
The relationships you form with professors, it does just go beyond the classroom or go beyond networking to really sort of an informal advisor or mentor. The Bologna community is really special in that it is just this one sole building and this one vestige of Johns Hopkins in all of Italy. And for that reason, I think everybody comes just full of enthusiasm and excitement to get to meet each other.
These are friendships that take a year to develop and a lifetime to enjoy. One of the huge advantages of the SAIS experience is that we're able to show you what an international career looks like.
Because as a student, you have many ideas about what the work world is like, but actually meeting the people who are there day to day in the ground help you realize the reality of what each job is like.
So what we do at SAIS Europe is invest a lot in bringing experts into the campus to share their life experience and taking students out on career tracks to major capital cities where they can encounter people who do many different kinds of things in international affairs.
The COVID-19 pandemic has posed great challenges to all universities.
I feel like this is a very safe space where people know what's going on in terms of government mandates. People know how best to control the virus. And if anything, this has been the space that I turn to. Living in a foreign city during a global pandemic, I have this amazing community of 100, 200 people that are down the street from me at all times.
If you want a career in foreign relations or international affairs, the SAIS is the place to be.
Because when you leave SAIS with a SAIS degree, your imagination is the only limit on what you can accomplish.
Well, unfortunately, you couldn't be here with us today, but we did want to give you a glimpse of what it's like to be a student at SAIS. And with that, I'd like to actually take this opportunity to introduce Director Plummer. Director Plummer is also an NE Professor of International Economics. Professor Plummer, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Daniela. Welcome, benvenuti a tutti, and I'm so glad so many of you have joined us. And I really hope that you're all safe and doing well. Just to reiterate what Daniela was saying, we're really sorry that we can't be welcoming you in person, but for now, Zoom will just have to suffice. The great thing about this format is that we can welcome you from all over the world. And so, where are you? It'd be interesting to see where you all are hailing from. So if you could write in the chat session, what the country, where you're based right now, that would be kind of fun. As you may have gleaned from the video we just played, the SAIS Europe campus is open, and this fall it's actually the only Johns Hopkins University campus to be offering live classes. In order to open this semester, we've invested in health security, have trained our faculty on the skills needed to teach from an online platform, and have installed the top-of-the-line technology in all of our classrooms to facilitate online and hybrid learning. We're adapting and discovering new ways to improve instruction, organize our teaching, expand our virtual footprint, and offer our students at SAIS Europe, SAIS DC, and the Hopkins Nanjing Center in China, as well as Baltimore, the opportunity to learn together. What we've learned will allow us to be stronger, more efficient, and more innovative in the future. That's at least some consolation as we count the terrible costs of this pandemic. SAIS Europe students have been amazing throughout the great disruption caused by COVID-19, a strong testament to the rock-solid community that the Bologna Center forges. More than half of the students here now had to quarantine for 14 days when they arrived, and they've done so with admirable patience and good humor. It certainly has taught me a lot about those things. The staff and faculty continue to adjust quickly to the changing external environment and have never lost sight of our mission to facilitate the delivery to our students of the very best educational experience possible. Now that we've discussed this elephant in the room, let me talk about SAIS. Please don't hesitate to ask questions. As mentioned earlier, you can use the Q&A box at any time. Now, SAIS aims to be the best graduate school in international relations in the world. Full stop, punto e basta. Our mission is to educate and prepare the next generation of leaders in government, business, diplomacy, multilateral institutions, and the nonprofit sector to solve the multifaceted 21st century global challenges. And let's face it, most challenges of the 21st century are all global, from climate change to health emergencies. The SAIS curriculum is strongly rooted in the study of international relations, economics, regional studies, and languages, offering the essential interdisciplinary tools to meet these challenges. I'll leave the nuts and bolts of the various master's degrees that SAIS offers to the admissions team later on during its panel. What I want to draw your attention to now is to our faculty, to what it means to be a student at SAIS Europe, and what it means to live and study in Bologna. SAIS Europe, of course, is located in Bologna, Italy, which we have called home for 65 years. I obviously haven't been there the entire time. Bologna boasts the oldest university in Europe, with enrollments exceeding 90,000 students. The city has maintained its character over the years, a lively academic community with, frankly, not too many tourists. It's a great place to live and known for its cultural openness and, of course, its culinary excellence. For students studying IR, Bologna is ideally located in the heart of Europe and also in the heart of the Mediterranean. It has very easy access to Africa, the Middle East, and the centers of European politics and culture. Travel is an essential part of the SAIS Europe experience, both for career treks and study trips around Italy and Europe, as we saw in the video, as well as for summer internships. Although we're basically a school for practitioners, academia and research are at the core of our curriculum. SAIS Europe faculty are thought leaders in key areas of research. Our 20 resident faculty and language instructors are joined by over 40 adjunct faculty members who travel to SAIS Europe from leading universities and institutions from across Europe, offering a breadth of international perspectives, academic traditions, and professional expertise. Our class sizes are actually very small, allowing students to benefit from a high degree of individual attention. We cap our electives at 20 students, and the median class size in a typical year is about 17. What's more, intellectual debate continues outside the classroom, and many long-standing relationships are formed between faculty and students. You'll hear many alumni speak about the SAIS community, and it's a great community to be part of. During their time at SAIS Europe, students work together, study together, live together, and travel together. They forge relationships that last throughout their lives. And it's not just with your current cohort. It's a connection with over 8,000 dedicated SAIS Europe alumni spread all over the world. After the experience here, you earn the title of Bolognese and become part of the 20,000 strong SAIS alumni across 140 countries who constitute an invaluable professional network. Our alumni are known for being innovative thinkers and problem solvers with the economic and policy expertise to tackle effectively today's most pressing challenges. On the panel, I'd like to welcome the faculty with me here today. Each of them is going to speak about their research areas and why these subjects are essential to international relations. So let me start with Professor Mark Gilbert. Professor Gilbert is originally from the UK and has been here at SAIS Europe since 2012. He is the professor of history and international studies. So Mark, why does history matter at SAIS?
I think history matters everywhere, as I'm sure you're all aware. I have a habit of saying that, but never mind. No, history does indeed matter at SAIS. I just thought I'd spend a few minutes explaining why. I thought I'd start just by listing the courses that I've taught since I came to SAIS. And I think people will appreciate straight away why history is an essential part of the curriculum just by listening to them. History of European integration, democracy and its discontents, peace and war, which is just war theory with historical examples, the end of European imperialism, which of course requires people to know about both imperialism and nationalism, international political thought, thinking about the way people have thought about the international system since the time of Machiavelli up to the Second World War, intellectuals and politics, talking about the big issues, fascism, communism, racism, imperialism, globalization, and the way intellectuals have talked about them. these are just some of the topics that I've been talking about, and which by study that we study the history of at SAIS. And I would point out that there's a very strong component of what you might describe as intellectual history in all of those topics. Ideas matter. One of the things that history teaches us, and studying history teaches us, is that ideas matter. Now, of course, I actually don't do the standard diplomatic history that you would expect to find at a place like SAIS. And in fact, we've just hired somebody who does do that kind of high politics approach. We have several other colleagues who integrate diplomatic, high political history into all aspects of the courses that they take. I think history gives you an essential background, which everything else can be built upon. But I think more generally, and you know, Mike asked me, why is history important if you're going to study international relations? I think you can look at what history adds to the mix, so to speak. I think if you study sociology, say, what do you study? Well, you study social classes. International relations, Professor Hall will disagree with me on this slightly subsequently, but ultimately international relations has typically been about the study of states. Political scientists study institutions, they study political systems, they study political conflicts. Economists study markets and how they work. Well, historians study people. They study human beings, actual human beings, how they think, what they do, what motivates them, what their ambitions are, what drives them, why they make the decisions they do. And in the case of SAIS, they do it in the case of international affairs. It doesn't have to be only in the case, of course, in international affairs. History really is the study of human beings in politics, or political history. It's the study of human beings in politics. Is that useful? Well, I think it's useful for sure. It was very interesting back in 2015. Foreign Policy did a poll of international relations practitioners, some of them very distinguished, and asked them which discipline was most important if you wanted to be a practitioner in international affairs. And though other disciplines scored very well, such as international relations and economics, the discipline which scored highest was in fact history. And I think that's because we genuinely, everybody always asks, can you learn from history? Well, when you learn from history, yes, you can learn from history. You can't learn in a specific case exactly what you've got to do from looking at previous examples in history. But you can look back at what happened in history and gain understanding. And I think, you know, Professor Plummer was saying, Mike was saying, how important it is for our students to go on, our students do go on and hold positions of great responsibility. I think it's very important if you're going to hold a position of great responsibility to know how people in such positions have thought and acted in the past. Thanks.
Okay, thanks so much, Mark. Professor Gilbert won't be around for a Q&A because he has to teach a class and the job calls. But if there are any questions, you follow up with Professor Gilbert via email or through Daniela and Bianca. Now I'd like to move on to Professor Nina Hall. Professor Hall comes to us from New Zealand and is an assistant professor of international relations. Nina, how does a SAIS education prepare students to face cutting edge issues like climate change, for example?
Great, and welcome all. Thanks for that introduction, Mike, and for leading Mark. I will nuance my position a little bit because I already had this challenge from Professor Gilbert that the study of IR is limited to states, and I do slightly disagree, partly because my own research as an IR scholar is not just about states, but I agree to the extent that in the past that has been the case. And What I want to do today in my talk in answering this question of how does a SAIS education prepare you and other students here on cutting edge problems like climate change is to make a couple of points. The first is that SAIS will really give you the subject and specific area skills that you need in order to succeed. But not just that, it will also give you the interdisciplinary skills to understand and bring together very different disciplines, including history, including economics, including international relations, to tackle global challenges like climate change. So let's tackle the first point I want to make about SAIS and subject expertise. So at SAIS, you can specialize in a number of thematic areas. These include energy and the environment, conflict management, international law, strategic studies, and more and more I would note jobs are being advertised, if you're thinking about where you're going to go afterwards, for specific thematic expertise. In fact, just yesterday I was reading one of the new Biden appointees, Linda Thomas Greenfield, who is now, as of January, if she's accepted by the Senate, she will become the UN representative of the American government. And she said, the State Department must increase its staffing pipeline to deepen its office's command of core diplomatic skills in areas of growing importance, such as climate change, technology, public health, and humanitarian diplomacy. So if we take that on, let's have a look at what we have here at SAIS. We have expertise in all of those areas. We have real depth in energy and the environment with scholars like Professor Marco Dell'Aquila, examining how do we tackle climate change and reshape the global energy sector to be more environmentally sustainable. On conflict management and humanitarian diplomacy, we have my colleague Rafael Del Sarto, who works on the Middle East and particularly issues around Palestine and Israel. We have a huge degree of expertise around international law from scholars like Professor Justin Frazzini, Professor Sara Perencino, working on multiculturalism and women's rights and international human rights law. So the point I'm making here is that we offer you classes which will develop technical expertise and subject expertise that will help you to understand both climate change and other big issues, cross-cutting issues. But in addition to that, what I think is very special about a SAIS degree is its interdisciplinarity. So we tackle these questions from multiple perspectives. It's not just that you're going to learn about climate change sitting in a class with Professor Marco Dell'Aquila, you'll also learn about it in my class and potentially many others. So here's a couple of examples of what that learning might look like. I teach a class called Theories of International Relations. In that class, we do a lot of the classic IR theory. That was really what we were hearing about before from my colleague Mark Gilbert, things like realism, liberalism, but we also have a whole class on green theories and climate change in IR. And we tackle why is climate change such a hard problem for states to resolve? What did IR scholarship tell us about that? And you'll read people like Cohen and Victor talking about it as a global public good and states of free riding. You'll contrast that with an Australian scholar, Robin Eckersley, who talks about the need for a green state, which would embed environmental protection at its heart. And so you start to get differing views within IR theory. And then even in class, students bring in what they've learned in economics and say, well, this is what we've learned about this problem here. So that's one example of interdisciplinarity. Another example is I teach a class on transnational advocacy. And just in the last couple of weeks, we had a session on climate activism where we read about the recent climate strikes happening both online and offline around the world. We discussed what made Greta and Fridays for Future so successful, and we heard from a leading environmental campaigner who happens to be based here in Bologna. His name is Claudia, who works for 350.org. And he answered student questions about what does he do on a daily basis? How does he coordinate across the world people's actions on climate change? And he discussed something really interesting, that in Italy, it's actually really hard to get newspapers, particularly senior editors, to take climate change seriously because many of them have come from another generation and they don't think climate change is a key issue. Students also brought up points that they'd learned from their other class in Green New Deals with Simone Tagliapetra, and talked about how does the European Green New Deal map onto what 350.org, this climate advocacy group, wanted. So there's some examples of what that means. You can draw on your classes in different ways and build on them and go into seminars. And I think one thing about the SAIS community that I think the video highlighted is that we are constantly engaging with each other, even beyond the classroom. I have students coming to my office hours who don't even take my classes to talk with me about their ideas and questions. So I think, in summary, SAIS is a great place to learn and develop technical expertise as well as interdisciplinarity around certain really big cross-cutting issues like climate change. Thanks.
Many thanks, Nina. Next, like me, Professor Eric Jones is a Bologna Center graduate, and once upon a time he was a Texas native, but he's almost Bolognese by now. He's professor of European Studies and International Political Economy and director of our Master of Arts in Global Risk program. Eric, why is it so important? Why is risk so important to the study of international political economy?
Well, thanks, Mike. Mark, before he finished his comments, made this point, and I thought it was really interesting about how historians focus on what people thought and did in the past. And I think that's important. But in political risk, what we focus on is what people will think and do in the future. And trying to figure out what people are going to think and do in the future is a little bit challenging, to say the least, but obviously very significant, right? I mean, look at what's going on in the United States right now and ask yourself, how is this transition going to play out from one presidency to another presidency, or as our Secretary of State reassured us, will we be moving from one Trump administration to another, right? So I think that's a really interesting question for us to ask, and it's challenging to answer. Now, obviously, in order to answer that kind of a question, you have to look to history, you have to look to institutions, you have to look to ideas to figure out what people think are appropriate forms of behavior. You have to look at laws to try to figure out whether these are going to be enforced, and you have to look at economics to see who's going to be supporting this, who stands to benefit and who not. And you put all that together in trying to make an estimation. Now, these kinds of estimations are the things that most of us do as hobbies. We read the news and we think this is something interesting for us to speculate about, or we argue over dinner table or at cocktail parties about the grand issues of the day and how we think they're going to unfold. But I think it's important for us to remember that a lot of people have to make forward-looking decisions that take these kinds of developments into account. And they're not making those decisions as a form of, hobby. They're making it because these decisions are their livelihood. Because if they're going to make a big investment in the United States, they need to know who the president's going to be. Likewise, in Europe right now, we have a very serious issue going on with the European budget. We need to know if the European budget is going to pass next week. If not, then that's going to have a significant impact on European economic performance. And that means people who invest in asset markets are going to have to adjust their positions accordingly. So this whole political risk issue is something that has major economic significance. It has major political significance as well, right? Look at the situation in Iran. The recent assassination of their top nuclear scientist has put the Iranian regime in a very difficult position. It needs to do something in order to show that it can control the situation on the ground and that it can stand up to whomever is their putative adversary in this relationship. Because they have to worry about whether failing to do something will invite more kinds of attacks like this one. So people who are doing business with Iran, whether that's commercial business or whether that's diplomatic business, it doesn't really matter, need to figure out how the Iranian regime is going to react, how that's going to affect politics in the region, and what the implications are going to be going ahead. Now, all of this is the stuff of political risk. And what we do at SAIS in order to prepare you to do this is a mixture of different things. As Nina pointed out, we try to introduce you to different regions of the world, because if you don't know something about somewhere, then you don't know anything about anywhere, right? So you've got to figure out how people work. And as Mark put it, you've got to figure out how real people work in a real environment outside of the models
that we use for theoretical inquiry. But that theory is also important. So we're going to teach you theory and different analytical toolkits that will help you in order to build models that are internally consistent and that have predictive value. And that predictive value is what we try to emphasize, but not with the idea of predicting things that don't matter, with the idea of predicting things that do matter. So we're going to also, and this is the last thing, we're going to bring in lots of practitioners to talk to you. And those practitioners will help reveal how the things that you like to do over the dinner table, at cocktail parties, talking about, speculating about the future, can be done more professionally to add value both to the public and to the private sector in ways that will turn your hobby into a vocation. And in that way, you can have an exciting career that allows you to study the things that you enjoy. Now, just as an illustration of that, what we've organized for this evening is our 9th anniversary annual Janneke Albers Memorial Roundtable on Political Risk. You've all been invited to this.
You're on mute, Eric. You're muted, Eric.
I'm going to put the link to this roundtable again in the chat. I know you guys have all seen it, but I just want you to have the opportunity to register for this. We've got the head of political risk at UBS, the head of political risk at Teneo, the head of political risk at IHS Markit, and we've got a brilliant woman who I used to work with named Stephanie Hare, who's going to come and talk about recent changes in technology policy and the privacy-related implications of that. So I invite you all to join us later on today, and you'll get to see more about what this political risk is all about. Mike, back over to you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Eric. Professor Sara Gelmetti is an Italian native, joining us from Switzerland, and is director of the Language Studies program. Sara, what is learning a foreign language? Why is it so essential to the study of international relations?
Oh, thank you, Mike. So hello, everybody. Now, I'm actually sitting outside SAIS, as you can see. You know, this is the entrance to our building. You can see all the bicycles. Inside here is Julius Bar, where our students and professors alike often sit outside, and we take a chance not only to speak about not only to speak about all the subjects that we discussed during class, but also to speak about these same subjects in a foreign language. So to answer Mike's question, this is precisely the point of studying languages at SAIS, which I would say it's not a point, but it's an added bonus. It's a great advantage. Why? SAIS is actually one of the very few graduate schools which has a language program in-house. We do not rely on external language schools. We have our own language program inside SAIS, which offers us a competitive advantage that the other schools don't have. It's not only a competitive advantage, but I think it's a need in today's world that is challenged by the pandemic. And we know this is a difficult time for everybody. So I used to begin my presentation to prospective students, telling them why it was so important to learn a foreign language. But then I understood that all of our students actually know why it is that important. So I would like to point out that it has become even more important during the pandemic. It has become even more important because we know that in every country, in every state, we have minorities. We have communities who speak another language. We have communities of minorities that might be at a strong risk of being even more isolated than they were before during a pandemic. So the need for interpreter, the need for policy makers who actually understand not only the language, but also the culture, not only the language that is spoken, but also the culture that belongs to these pockets, to these communities that, as I said, pretty much every state in the world has now become even more relevant and more important. So this is something that we are very proud of. We are very proud of contributing to the education of our students in a globalized world, but a world that is currently being challenged by these difficulties. So I would like to follow back on what Professor Nina Holt, Professor Gilbert, and Professor Johnson, of course, Professor Plummer have said before. At SAIS, we have a very interdisciplinary curriculum whereby we try to have every part of the school analyze, discuss, and tackle the same issues from different perspectives. So, as Professor Nina Old before made a very good example when she talked about climate change and climate activism that can be seen from different perspectives. What I will tell you is that we do pretty much the same in our language classes. Just like last month, for example, in my intermediate high level class, which would be B1 class going B2 for those of you who are familiar with the Common European Framework, intermediate high with the American Council. So we discussed precisely that issue, the issue of, not the issue, but the topic of climate activism. So students from different parts of the world were coming up with their own experience. They were trying to help their classmates understand what is Friday for Future in Germany, what is Extinction Rebellion in Italy, how does it work, this kind of activism in France, what are the key words in order for our students to become actors, not just an audience. We do not want for our students just to understand what they hear. We want them to be able to actively participate. We want them to be able to conduct a negotiation with all the tools that they have learned in all the other subjects at SAIS, with all their economic background, with all their historical expertise, but we want to be able to apply the same skills in other languages. So this is why we are so glad that we have an in-house language program whereby we teach 8 languages: Arabic, English, French, German, Italian, Portuguese, Russian, and Spanish, with one additional language, Chinese, which is being taught through a partnership with the Confucius Institute at the University of Bologna. We are so glad, as I say, to be able to teach these languages with a functional approach, what we call functional approach. So it's the language for specific purposes approach, which is rather different from what you can actually learn using an app, an online app like Babbel or programs like, I don't know, this kind of Duolingo that are Rosetta Stone, excellent online application that will teach you a good amount of vocabulary, but they will not teach you the functions. This is why I say functional approach. They will not teach you the functions that you will actually need in your field of expertise when you're out there in the job market. You will need to be able to write a report for the European Union. You will need to be able to discuss figures, to discuss statistics, to compare the budget. You will need that kind of special language of expertise. This is why at SAIS Europe, we don't actually use the classical textbooks, but we use authentic materials. We use papers and magazine specific of the field of economics, history, and all the other subjects taught at SAIS, energy, environment, international relations. We use real authentic materials because we want our students to feel that the language classes are not apart from the other classes at SAIS. We think that what makes SAIS really so special, and this is not me saying, it's actually the students who come to our classes, all of our classes, not only the language classes. They say that what is so special, it's that it's a continuum. You don't feel like moving from one class to the other, it's going from one school to the other. They can really perceive that there is a red line, meaning like something that unites and joins all the classes at SAIS. And this is why I think that the language program is so special. That in addition to the fact that our students are special, our students are multilingual. So as I said, you can learn a language in class and then you can practice what you have learned outside class. So this just to give you a very general overview. Then, of course, if you want to get in touch with me, I can give you more details about what kind of levels we offer. We offer, of course, from the beginner to the advanced level, what classes look like, but these are all details. I'm not going to go into details. I would just like to conclude with a quote that Professor Nina Hall just sent me this morning, and it's very relevant, I thought. So Nina was talking before about an interview, an article where Biden's nominee for the US Special Representative to the UN, she was mentioned in that article. So the same person also said in the same article, the State Department also needs to rethink how and where it invests in language studies. This is very serious. She said, 1 out of every 4 positions designated as requiring foreign language skills is filled by an officer who does not, in fact, meet the minimum language requirements. So we hope for our students not to be one of these, 1 out of every 4 position, okay, filled by an officer who does not meet the language requirements. We want for our students to be acknowledged and recognized as, oh, she or he is coming from SAIS, and they do fulfill the minimum language requirements. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much, Sara. And we'll just ignore the fact that it looks like you have a police car behind you.
Yeah, of course. We feel protected at SAIS, right? I believe they are there keeping an eye on all the bicycles.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, last, as a professor of economics at SAIS Europe for the past 20 years now, I thought I'd address the question of why economics is important to the study of international relations. And in fact, economics constitutes an essential part of the study of IR and has been a core component of the SAIS curriculum since its foundation. A good grasp of it is a sine qua non for a comprehensive understanding of how countries interact and how policymakers forge institutions to cooperate in building the best future for their citizens. We could think of this at 2 different levels. One is more domestic and international, but I believe that they're both very closely intertwined. So a strong understanding of the basics of economic underpinnings of domestic policy analysis is critical in showing how the costs and benefits and how costs and benefits of any policy a government would like to devise is, the different dimensions of that policy. It's critical to understand the general equilibrium effects of how these policies affect the economy in order to make sure that knock-on effects of any sort of enlightened economic measure are taken into account. For example, you may be in favor of a minimum wage. Okay, how high should it be? And how do we anticipate the increase in unemployment? And what do we do about that? If you're in favor of a carbon tax, how do we mobilize resources to facilitate the associated structural change and apply the tax efficiently? Do you want to spend more money on education and infrastructure? Well, if so, what's the opportunity cost of, say, less resources available to policy alleviation or for health? And the list goes on. We have to have a good framework to analyze these policies. And as you'll learn as you go more into economics, is that often the road to hell is paved with good intentions, okay? But most directly, international economics is critical to the study of international relations. Economically, countries interact via international trade. Since the 19th century, the gains from trade have been evident and have been characterized, but there are a plethora of political, security, and legal issues that need to be considered and overcome in forging an inclusive, welcoming, and just international trading system. To complement that system, we need to understand international financial issues like exchange rates, the balance of payments, and what seems to be domestic policy in the context of an open economy. So here we see, international economics and international political economy work hand in hand here. And when President-elect Biden says that he wants to focus on domestic issues, he really has another thing coming, because international issues in a very globalized world are domestic issues. And I think a very interesting example of this would be the recent conclusion of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, which is a major free trade area among 15 Asian economies, making up about almost 1/3 of humanity and almost 1/3 of international trade. And this is going to have very important economic effects. And these sort of economic effects, you're going to learn how to analyze them in the classroom. RCEP, this arrangement, had to be negotiated within the confines of global governance, of global laws. And so a knowledge of that kind of institutional framework is very important. But very interestingly, with this RCEP agreement, the fact that it's for the first time bringing China, Japan, and Korea together in a free trade area for the first time, 3 countries for whom there's a very fraught history, that makes it very exciting and very interesting. And it's going to, from an economic point of view, create a very powerful region in terms of many advanced manufacturers to compete with the United States and Europe. And what about from a security point of view? In this RCEP arrangement, you've got this emerging, I wouldn't say always confrontation, but obviously the US and China have quite a few conflicts that have been brewing. What happens when you have China in the RCEP agreement and the US outside of it? And you have China and its Belt and Road Initiative, which is putting in the infrastructure and paving the way for closer economic integration that RCEP will facilitate. What does that do to US policy? Does it make the United States want to rethink its engagement in the region, or how should it best address it? And these sort of issues you cannot get if you just study economics, or if you just study business, or if you just study politics, or if you just study security. You need to bring all of these things together. And I think, to me, that's what SAIS does extremely well. It shows you the multidisciplinary aspects of very important policy innovations that we really need to understand, particularly in the 21st century. So with that, I will hand it back to Daniela.
Thank you very much, Professor Plummer. So this is the point in the presentation which we encourage everyone to begin submitting their questions. I'm going to share again the panelists' names, just in case you don't remember who our professors are. In the Q&A, you can submit your questions. We would encourage you to submit them to a specific faculty member. Otherwise, we'll throw the questions to the panels. So with that, I'm going to begin with the first question. Victor writes, will these classes that we are hearing about be limited to the certain degree programs, or the Masters of International Relations, for example, incorporate classes from all of these fields and professors? Maybe that one I'll throw to Professor Plummer, or if any of our professors want to answer, feel free to do so.
Sure. There are a few courses that are specific to, say, the Master of Arts in Global Risk degree. But in general, we share all these courses, and we don't have any kind of silos that we create. So somebody who's in the MAIR program can take virtually almost all courses that we offer at SAIS Europe. The one exception would be, for example, if there's a course that is required of the Master of European Public Policy program, and it reached its limit of 20 students. That hasn't happened before, but if that had to be the case, we obviously would give preference to the students that had to take it, and then there would be a bidding process for the remaining slots. But in general, that's not an issue. And so what we try very hard to do at SAIS Europe is to make sure, even though we have several different programs, that we don't have silos, that we're all, we take these classes together and we interact together, and so that we function as one campus rather than one that's set up into different programs.
Thank you, Professor Plummer. We have a question for Professor Jones. The question reads, how do you measure, Professor Jones, predictability of certain governments or administrations which are unpredictable?
So that's a really good question. I mean, what we do, we don't measure the predictability of specific governments, because different governments are predictable in different ways, right? So if we were to look at the Italian government, for example, there's a huge controversy boiling about whether Italy will ratify the reform to the European Stability Mechanism in a vote that's going to take place in the Italian Parliament in the middle of next week. That's a unique situation. So you would have to make an estimate on the likelihood that they're going to ratify it or not. So implicit in your question is, how do we put a number on that estimate? And what we do is we have a course that helps you better to understand what it means to put a number on it, because the presumption that comes along is that if I'm putting a number on it, I must have some very precise insight. But in fact, given that all percentages have to add up to 100, if I say it's more likely than not, I've already given you an indication that the number is greater than 50, right? So what we're going to do is help you better to understand what numbers mean and how the numbers we put on future events are useful. Because let's face it, for the people who have to make forward-looking decisions, often they inform those decisions with a spreadsheet. So if you don't give them a number, they can't put it in the spreadsheet and they can't run their analysis. So we do have to create numbers, but that doesn't mean that we're creating artificial precision.
Thank you, Professor Jones. Our next question is for Professor Hall. The question reads, here's a question for Professor Hall, but possibly for others as well. You mentioned some of your adjunct professors' areas of expertise, but did not point out anyone focused explicitly on challenges posed by emerging technology. Are there people in the field focused at SAIS specifically on this subject matter? That may be a question for a few of the panelists, but not just for Professor Hall.
Sure, I can have a go and others can jump in. Professor Plummer probably knows better the full list. I think we have had a course on cyber and cybersecurity in the past, but we've also had really interesting mini classes. One that we had last year, which I was involved with, was a class on digital methods and how to study social media. More and more research, of course, needs to understand and engage with Twitter, Facebook, and be able to analyze vast amounts of data. So we had a class from Richard Rogers that came in for a mini course on that. And those themes may come up in other courses too, but I'll hand over to my other participants if they want to comment more on the specific question around emerging threats of new tech.
Well, just I'll add a few words. I mean, we've had courses such as, science, technology, and climate change, which I guess is going to be offered this year, but perhaps in the future. And I think that in looking at emerging technologies, I think that we find them really, their analysis has to be part of many of the different courses that we're teaching. Even if you look in economics, which I know I would know the best, the job disruption caused by emerging technologies is much more important than essentially anything else out there, particularly, international trade. That job disruption ends up being quite exaggerated compared to emerging technologies. And so is the answer, we have to answer the question of how do we deal with them then? How do we integrate this? How do we smooth over structural change? How do we compensate the losers with the gains that we get from this? What's the best way to integrate emerging technologies throughout the economy? These issues are dealt with in most economics classes, I'd say, and I'm sure in many of the other IR classes as well.
Thank you, Professor Plummer. We have half an hour for Q&A. So I see that there are about 73 people online. So if each of you sends a question, if we can definitely go through it. But I just do want to reiterate that this is a great opportunity for you to have FaceTime with our faculty. So don't be shy about submitting your questions, particularly if there's a specific class that you're interested in or a specific area of interest. The next question is for Professor Gelmetti. A student asks, if admitted, if a student isn't sure about which language they want to pursue, does SAIS support them in making that decision? If a prospective student is undecided between two languages, is there a suggestion about how to approach a choice in the application process?
Thank you for this question. Absolutely, yes. We provide 2 weeks of academic advising at the beginning of every semester. And I personally provide academic advising every day during these 2 weeks, and all of my colleagues too, all the other language faculty have certain hours every day, or pretty much every day, reserved for academic advising. We truly believe in academic advising because we all think that is a sign of intellectual curiosity when students are not really fixated on one single language, meaning that they want to explore their options. I think it's an excellent idea. This is a graduate school. So I always tell students, this is a great opportunity. It's the last time that you will have this great opportunity before you land a job out there in the real world, as we say. So this is a great opportunity of studying a language at an intense level. This is what I wanted to say. Once you will have a job, you can still take a language in the evening, in your spare time, on weekends. But SAIS Europe, you will, and SAIS DC for what, in any case, you will be able to take a language for 3 days per week. Almost 5 hours of language instruction in class, which is a great opportunity. So we do not expect every student to come in and be 100% sure of what language she or he will take. We are here to help you. We are going to guide you through. I always tell students, every student has to make her or his informed, educated decision. I'm never going to tell students take this or that language. I give them all the options. I hear what their needs are in terms of professional needs, in terms of language background, in terms of language attitude. There are many factors that actually come into play. So once I get all this information, I give the students all the tools to decide what language to take. And usually they are pretty happy with their choice. Also, keep in mind, if you're not happy with your choice, after one semester, you can actually switch and take another language. We are pretty open with that. So the word is yours once you come to SAIS.
Thank you, Sarah. Just so everybody knows, Professor Hall actually has to teach a class at 4 o'clock. So in the few minutes that she has remaining, I will have, I'll put her email address in the inbox if there was a specific question that you didn't get a chance to ask her. But we're going to continue on with the lots of questions that we're getting. We have a specific question, again, on artificial intelligence. The student writes, does the curriculum include courses on artificial intelligence? I am more concerned with technological advancements which expand the very scope of human rights, be it in a subtle or invasive way. With the invention of RFID devices which track employees' behavior, systems for facial recognition used in undemocratic regimes, attempts at gene editing and cloning, constantly involving humanoid engineering and drone warfare. Wow, that's a mouthful. Who's going to be courageous enough to tackle that one?
Well, I think that we don't have any specific course on that per se here in Bologna, but in Washington, they do offer a few related courses. And now that we have all become much better in using virtual platforms, et cetera, those courses won't be just available to students who will be going to Washington their second year in the MAIR program, but also for students who are potentially students who are in Bologna if they want to take the course online. So that is, as Bernadette O'Toole, our registrar, noted in the chat session, this is going to be something we'll be doing much more of over time, including with our Nanjing campus. And as you may imagine, that is a very important area that they're interested in.
Thank you, Professor Plummer. We have another question for Sarah Gilmetti. Actually, we have two specific questions focusing on languages, so I'll read each one separately. The first one reads, within the language courses, do you learn how to articulate problems in international relations, economics? In other words, is there overlap between language learning and other disciplines?
Absolutely, absolutely. Mind you, I'm going to be very honest, we are not going to teach you the things that we do not know. I mean, it's going to be Professor Hall, Professor Plummer, Professor Jones that are going to teach you how to articulate these problems and how to solve these problems or how to tackle these problems with the tools that they give you. What we are going to do is to help you put these same things that you learned in the other subjects, these same tools, to transfer them in the language and in the culture that you're going to be learning. I always tell students, you know, the way you conduct a negotiation, for example, the way you discuss an economic issue in English is not the same way that you will approach the same subject in Italian. Everybody knows, for example, that Italians like long introductions, something that, for example, a German will never do and will go straight to the point. So this is what we call the pragmatic approach. So we teach you the linguistic and the pragmatic approach. Then the rest is going to be taught by our colleagues. You know, I do not really know that much about economics, aside from what I learn every time that I listen to my colleagues, or every time that I try to read some econ papers. But absolutely, there is an overlap. There is an interdisciplinarity, which I think is the big selling point for SAIS. What I think it's really, really unique of this school. And there is this multidisciplinary approach that Professor Plummer was talking about.
Thank you. We have another question actually for you while I have you. The student writes, the prospective student writes, what level of Chinese instruction is available to SAIS students through the Confucius Institute across a year at SAIS Europe?
It's pretty, across the year, well, across the year is 2 semesters. So that I cannot say because I don't know what your starting level is. But it's pretty much, you know, we had, before actually starting our partnership with the Confucius Institute, I spent 1 long year trying to understand what the courses were like. And I'm not a specialist of Chinese languages because my field of expertise is more in the European languages. But with the help of my colleagues of the Chinese department at SAIS Washington, we actually try to make sure that the courses offered by the Confucius Institute are as similar as possible to the courses that we offer through SAIS. So something else that I wanted to share with you is that next year, very likely, we will offer classes online through our language department at SAIS Washington. So very likely Chinese will be taught both by the Confucius Institute and our colleagues at SAIS DC. We are trying to see what levels will be available, just like we at SAIS Europe, we're going to be teaching our flagship languages like Italian, French, German, most of the European languages, Portuguese, Spanish, and Arabic, of course, and Russian. So we basically what we're trying to do now is to offer as many chances as possible for a student to take a language class in the level that is more adequate for their current level. So we offer in-class classes at SAIS Europe. We are trying to arrange, as I said, for online classes with the collaboration of SAIS DC and also with the Confucius Institute. So pretty huge variety of classes that we offer. Indeed.
Great, thank you, Sarah. I have a question on political risk, so I'm going to address this to Professor Jones. Again, for those of you submitting questions, if you want the question to be addressed to a specific professor, just let me know, but I'll read this one for Professor Jones. The question writes, how do you approach the study of political risks and social issues in developing regions such as Latin America and Asia? Are these topics common in classes, or are the courses designed around a more Western agenda? Professor Jones?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, we have at SAIS a long tradition of studying all parts of the globe. In the political risk course itself, we teach methods, but then we encourage you in your electives to focus on those areas where you want to develop expertise. So if you want to develop expertise in Africa, for example, there are plenty of stuff that you can study on African politics. If you want to study Latin America, we have courses on that as well. We have courses on Asia. We have courses on emerging markets in Europe. And so in that sense, the idea that we would cut ourselves off from the global South is not accurate. We're actually actively engaged in trying to understand what's going on in the global South. Not all of us. I am myself a Europeanist, but that doesn't mean that because I'm a Europeanist, my colleagues are not interested in other parts of the world, or indeed that I'm not interested in other parts of the world. And some of the work that I've done for the European Parliament, for example, has focused on trying to build relationships both with Africa and with Latin America. In terms of the more specific question, though, we precisely developed the core course on risk, the course on risk in international politics and economics, in order to help people engage in lots of different issues related to culture. And the class that I'll be hosting next week is focused on cultural analysis and how we use that as the basis for making predictions and why culture is so challenging to operationalize at the same time.
Great, thank you, Professor Jones. We have a question that writes, I would be interested in knowing what kind of learning opportunities are there for someone who is interested in public policy for energy transition including electricity sector transition? It's a very specific question. I guess maybe we could talk about the courses that we teach on climate change and energy.
Nina, do you want to get that?
I think Professor Halst, she had to leave to go teach, so maybe that's a question we could have you email directly to Professor Hall, whose email address is in the chat box.
But you know, I might mention, as you say, we have a course on energy and climate change, and we have a course on renewable energy, which is almost a project finance course. So you have to do a little corporate finance in taking the course. But Marco Dell'Aquila teaches it. He's a practitioner, so that's a very popular course among students. And as was also mentioned earlier by Nina, we have a new course on Green New Deals, which is also very popular and deals with associated topics.
Can I add something to that, Mike? I mean, one thing to emphasize, obviously we're not a professional school that focuses narrowly on the science around energy and the environment, but as a school that focuses broadly on economics and politics and that intersects with these issues, we have a huge number of alumni that have gone out and begun working in this area. So, for example, Professor Dell'Aquila that Mike Plummer just alluded to is one of our alumni. And we have alumni that are working both in private equity in the transition space and working in the public sector. One of the alumni I know best, a guy called Cole Freites, started in the energy sector in hydrocarbons and then moved to renewables and now runs a big firm that's associated with combining renewables and agriculture. So I think that there are lots of opportunities that SAIS can make available in that space.
Great, thank you, Professor Jones. We have another question concerning foreign languages. I'll give this one to Sarah Gilmetti. The prospective student writes, how would you suggest keep practicing a language during this pandemic? Will the courses offer any continuity online? Also, if a student already knows English, Spanish, and Italian, would you suggest to keep mastering a third language or to learn a new one?
I'll start with the second part. Well, first of all, congratulations. English, Spanish, and Italian. Wonderful. Yeah, this is not an exception, actually, because many of our students are already bilingual or have acquired even a third language during the course of their studies, previous studies, before coming to SAIS Washington. Again, it really depends on what level of expertise you already have reached in the three languages that you already speak. It really depends on your professional career goal. If you want to go work and apply for a position at the European Union, for example, they ask for at least a B2 or a C1 level. So we're talking about a level that is pretty high. In that case, for example, I would definitely advise a student to take our higher level classes like level 4 and level 5 so that he or she can reach a pretty good professional level by the time they graduate from SAIS. On the other hand, a student might say, no, I already have like 2 languages at the advanced level. I already have another language at the intermediate level. I'm interested in acquiring a new language, which I think is also perfectly fine because, as I said before, SAIS is a unique opportunity in your life to learn a language that you've never even tried before, that you've never even listened to before. So you already know Spanish, Italian, and English. You have plenty of opportunities, in front of you. You could learn another Romance language like Portuguese or French, or you could go for an entirely different language, German, Russian, Arabic, which will open up a different world. So as I said before, in order to help you decide, the best thing is to go for academic advising so that we see what your perceived interest is. For example, I don't know, if you're interested in energy, environment, or certain kind of renewable resources, maybe we can try to figure out what is the best language for you in that respect. Conflict management, maybe you're interested in sub-Saharan Africa or in the Gulf region. I don't know, it really depends on where your interests are. And as I said, what you want to do with your languages. So as I said before, academic advising would be the best choice. Then how to practice a language during the pandemic. Yeah, this is a question that we have been tackling actually since last year in March, when we went in a full lockdown. And last spring, all of our courses were entirely online. This semester, instead, we're very happy our courses are hybrid, meaning that we have some students in Bologna attending classes physically in class, and other students that are either in China or in the United States or in Japan, in other Asian countries that could not come here to Bologna, they are attending our classes on Zoom. So how to practice? Of course, if you are in Bologna, you have a comparative advantage. That there's always going to be all the students around, and many students are going to be around. And we often organize for language groups, conversation groups, where students can practice their language. So last spring, what we did, we transferred these conversation groups online. Zoom is a wonderful tool. We have been using Zoom. We are all, I don't want to say proficient because that's a big word, but we have become sort of experts in using every kind of function on Zoom, you know, breakout rooms, share documents. In languages, we also use other tools. So there are actually plenty of opportunities and possibilities to practice your language outside class. It all depends on time, how much time you have, time management. It's important. But again, once you come here, we will give you several possibilities, and we will tell you where the language groups are, how you can actually connect to other people that are studying your same language. And then if I can brag a little bit about the language program, honestly, all of the language faculty is so very available for extra office hours. I know that all my colleagues have been giving office hours at 9 p.m. in the evening, because we do understand that it's really important for a student to practice the language, even for a student that is located in the United States. And so we have a 6, 7, or 8 hour time difference. We try to do our best to accommodate the student. So I think that the human factor at SAIS Europe plays a big part into the language learning process.
Thank you, Sarah. We have about 15 minutes, and so we definitely have ample time to get to our questions. If you haven't submitted a question, this is the time to do it. Otherwise, we won't be able to get to your question. We have a very interesting question that I will ask. Okay, this is a little bit of a softball. I'm going to throw this to everybody. I love it when we get this question. From an IR point of view, which SAIS campus would you recommend I choose to study at? I'm going to ask maybe Professor Jones to begin answering that, but I think we could all have something to say about that one.
Well, I mean, if you're going to study international relations, it always strikes me that you might want to have some experience abroad. So if you're Italian, that experience abroad would be in the United States. If you're not Italian, then that experience abroad would probably be in Italy, particularly if you plan on finishing your degree in the United States. So then you get 2 different countries that you can experience. Even if you're Italian, though, I would highly recommend coming to SAIS Europe, if only because what you're going to encounter when you get here are 200 students that come from 40 different countries, and you're going to be confronted with probably the most diverse student body that you will ever meet. And that diversity is hugely important in terms of fostering conversations that are open and inclusive. And you will take those relationships that you build at SAIS Europe over to Washington with you, if you choose to go to Washington for the second year of your degree, and discover that having a community in Washington is a much more interesting way to pursue your study than going and being an individual in a much larger urban environment. So I think there are huge advantages associated with being at SAIS Europe, and I would recommend it to anybody.
Thank you, Professor Jones. We have a general question, and I'm going to throw this out, although I can definitely elaborate more on this in the admissions panel. And the prospective student writes, choosing a language, a field of study, a capstone project, a specific career track are important decisions. When would we have time to choose them, before or during the master's? I think maybe for the language bit, I'm going to have Sarah Gelmetti answer. And then maybe if I think each of our faculty does a little bit of academic advising, I think it'd be great to share how that looks like. So maybe we'll start with Sarah for the language portion.
Sure. Absolutely. As I mentioned briefly before, you will have 2 weeks, 2 full weeks of academic advising before actually having to choose the language. And these 2 full weeks of academic advising come at the end of September, which means that you'll be here at usually our students tend to arrive for preterm, so mid-August, some of them end of August, meaning before classes actually start, the first week of October, you will have 4 or 5 weeks to decide what to choose in terms of language studies. And you can always change your mind during the add drop period, which is 1 week after the classes have started. Students like to call that period shopping period, because of course they can change from one language to the other. We try to encourage students to make their well-informed and educated choice before classes actually start, because as I said before, we provide every kind of tool, really. We provide individual academic advising. We provide general info sessions. Usually I give 2 full info sessions before the academic year actually starts, the same in January. So usually our students, by the time classes start, the first week of October, they have a pretty good idea of what language they want to take and what to expect from the language level. I take the chance to add a little bit of information. Before classes begin, if you have already studied language, you will be given a placement test, a very accurate placement test, which we have developed in-house at SAIS Europe, which means that once you enter a specific language class, all the other students in the language class will be at your same level because of this placement test. Our classes are really small, 10 students at most in the intermediate advanced level and 12 students at most in the beginner level. So all this to say that usually when classes start, students have a pretty good idea of what kind of class they have entered, what decision they have made, and what program, what syllabus they will find themselves dealing with during the course of the semester.
Thank you, Sarah. Regarding how academic advising works, I know that both Professor Plummer and Professor Jones are professors. In addition to teaching, they do some academic advising. Professor Jones, could you talk a little bit about how academic advising works for you?
Sure. I'm going to sort of shape it in the context of the question the way it was asked, because I think it's a really important question. A lot of students come to SAIS apprehensive that they should have everything organized the day they arrive, the internship that they're going to do in the middle of between the first and the second year, or at the end of the 1-year degree of study, the concentration that they're going to have, the job that they're going to get when they graduate, the languages that they're going to speak, and all the rest. And my response to that would be, wait, the huge advantage that you get coming to SAIS is that you will be exposed to a raft of professionals who have careers in academia, in diplomacy, in the private sector, in public sector, in international organizations. And you'll be exposed over that time to a series of opportunities that you never would have imagined, because unless you've grown up in an international environment, the likelihood that you'll know all the opportunities that a school like SAIS can make available at the get-go is very, very small. So my advice would be, don't try to plan everything. As a matter of fact, do the opposite. Come with an open mind and take advantage of the many opportunities that we'll make available, both in terms of advising and in terms of events, career tracks, special discussions, your own classmates. And as you go through the process, then begin to decide. And I'll say, when I came to SAIS, I was coming to SAIS in the late 1980s with the simple idea that I would do something entertaining before I went to law school. And what I ended up experiencing was completely unexpected. I changed from being a lawyer to being something closer to being an economist. I instead of focusing on France, I ended up studying Belgium and the Netherlands. I ended up working in Central and Eastern Europe. I came back here and managed to get a job with these guys. And none of that was anything that I ever even thought about when I came to SAIS. By the way, at the same time, I picked up French and German and Dutch and Italian, and I never thought I would do that either. So there's just so many things that you will get the opportunity to do that you shouldn't decide it. You shouldn't decide it in advance. That's like ordering your dinner before you look at the menu.
Yeah, if I could just add something on that, I agree with that entirely. And I think that, as Sarah was mentioning with the language program, in the substantive program, we will assign to you an advisor, and that's just based on our idea of who might be a good match with you. But you can actually go and talk to anybody. Our doors are open. You can talk to faculty, ask questions, and as Eric said, keep an open mind in thinking about what you want to do during the year. And I always think it's a good idea to kind of also at the same time you're thinking about your academic path and the curriculum that you're interested in tapping. Also, you to think about longer term about what you want to do. Now, Eric changed his goals. I changed mine as well. But I think that you should use, particularly your first year, as a way of kind of discovering which direction you want to go in. And so I think when you talk to the career services people in particular, they will have ideas. They will start working with you from the day you arrive at SAIS Europe to help you with that and kind of think things through. And they'll organize things with our alumni and plenty of events like Career Day and these things to help you along the way to kind of think through what might be of interest to you going forward. So I agree with Eric that keeping your options open isn't just something you can do, but it's something probably all of us would recommend that you do.
Thank you, Professor Plummer. The next question is a good question for you, Professor Plummer. The prospective student writes, do you find that there are more course offerings in a certain area at SAIS Europe in comparison to SAIS DC? Based on the website, it says SAIS has more economic-based offerings in Washington. I think we could maybe talk about the fact that we're smaller, and given that we've got lots of classes, but I'll throw it over to you, Professor Plummer.
Yeah, we have, I think that we're a smaller campus, obviously, and I think I'd have to count the courses, but we have probably, I believe 70 next year. We'll probably have 70 different courses. So maybe 62 or 63 different electives. And if you think of you got to think of the fact that probably half of what you'll be taking are to fill kind of requirements. And so you're looking at 4 courses, choosing among all those options are plenty. But having said that, DC they probably have, 4 times the students that we have, something like that. So they obviously have a lot more courses that they're offering there. And even though I think we have a strong set of economics that we offer here in Bologna, they certainly offer more than DC. So there's plenty there. We offer all the courses that are necessary to fulfill any requirements that you need in economics. And then some, we've got these electives, but I think that also in DC, you'll see that there are a lot of electives, and particularly some of the more advanced economic courses are offered in DC. But again, as mentioned earlier, increasingly, if you are very tooled up as an economist, and there's a course in DC that is really interesting to you and you want to do something online, that next year could possibly be an option as we do more things from a virtual platform, even post-pandemic. Let's hope it's post-pandemic.
Thank you, Professor Plummer. I'm just looking at the time. We have time for one more question. I am going to look at, I have a question that's rather philosophical. So this, I think everyone could potentially contribute to this one. This prospective student writes, if there is one thing you can change about the program, so what would it be? Just before asking my faculty to answer this, we have gone through a large curriculum review, particularly for the Masters of Arts program, which has now become the Masters of Arts in International Relations, for the students that are coming this fall. From what I understand, I think the programs that we teach here are very, very relevant. But maybe Professor Plummer, one of the things that we do, and this is something that maybe you could talk to, is that all of our students have the opportunity to give feedback on faculty, and we evaluate our courses every year to determine their relevancy. But maybe please feel free to add to that.
Well, that's a great question. Let me take the first shot. I think that, frankly, if we as a faculty knew that there's something we should be doing, we'd like to do, but weren't doing, we'd change it and we would do it that way. And I think that we've got that kind of dynamism. One of the advantages of being smaller is that we can do that very quickly. Now, something like, particularly like the MAIA program we do together as SAIS, Bologna and DC, we work together, but certainly in terms of our course offerings and the things that we're doing on the ground, we have the option to make any changes that we need to do. And so we, as Daniela said, we keep our ears open for possible suggestions about what might be useful. And if we hear, a group of students say, hey, it'd be nice if we had more in this area, we could discuss it with the faculty to see if everybody agrees, and then we could move forward. So I guess that we would address that. We're nimble enough to be able to address those sorts of things.
I think Mike is being a little bit too modest. There is one thing that we would all change, right? We'd make it free. There's just no way that we've figured out to do that. And yet when I say we'd make it free, I say that with utmost sincerity, because if we could make it free, we could bring in an incredible diversity of students. As it is, what we're going to do is work unbelievably hard to raise the funds to make the student body as diverse as possible. And indeed, we invest a huge amount of time and effort in order to keep costs down and to make this program affordable. And I know it probably doesn't look that way on the receiving end, but from our side, we're actively trying to solve the one thing that we all agree we would like to change. We just haven't made as much progress as we would like.
You're muted, Daniela.
Sarah, you spoke quite in detail about the foreign languages, so I don't think there would be anything that we would change about our language program.
Well, no, we can always dream. We can always dream about many things. Really, rather than changing, I'm always thinking about how to improve the program. And I have to say that every year we've made some progresses with online tools, we've opened up opportunities. So one of the things that we are working on, and I'm really happy about this, is about inviting our non-language professors to our language classes. I try to increase that every year in our classes, especially at the higher level, when students reach like intermediate, high, advanced levels, is really good to have external guests, meaning people are not teaching the language, and they come to class to talk about their field of expertise without thinking about the language context. They come and they talk about, as I said, their field of expertise as if they were discussing that in an open lecture outside language classes. So this is my hope. Is that all of my colleagues will come to, I know that Professor Plummer has done that for French classes because his French is absolutely excellent. In Italian, I've invited Professor Justin Fresini, who is bilingual English and Italian. I've invited Professor Vera Zamagni, who is an Italian economist. And I know that my colleagues in the other language classes have also invited non-language professors. And so my dream, if I could change something, is that every class I would have an external guest from the non-language faculty.
Yeah. Fantastic. So we're getting to the conclusion of our morning faculty panel. I just want to take this opportunity to thank Professor Plummer as Director of SAIS Europe for having moderated this morning's panel, as well as our faculty, Professor Gilbert, Professor Hall, Professor Jones, and Professor Gilmetti, for sharing their experiences with our students. You are a wonderful resource, and I know that we've had some great questions today. So thank you so much for joining us for this morning panel. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. It was
Look, everybody.
Sure.
Thank you. Grazie a tutti. Arrivederci. Bye-bye.
We are delighted to continue with our open day panels. We will shortly introduce our career team, but before we get into our career services team, I do have a video of our career services and the wonderful work that they do. So the video will last about 3 minutes, after which I'll invite the director of our career services office to present our career team. So here we go with the video.
The Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies, SAIS, is a leading American graduate school offering advanced degrees in international relations, international affairs, and global risk.
My SAIS studies have foundationally prepared me for where I am now in my career and helped me gain the experience necessary to take on my career in an informed and confident way.
With campus locations in the United States, Europe, and Asia, SAIS students gain a competitive advantage to build their professional networks, learn from renowned faculty and policy practitioners, and gain hands-on work experience. Our students also benefit from an influential alumni network of over 20,000 from across 140 countries.
Also, thanks to the support of the Career Service, this has been very useful in reaching out to the different alumni, always ready to help.
The SAIS Europe Career Services Office plays a pivotal role in ensuring the professional success of our graduates.
I would say that the SAIS education prepared me exactly for the kind of career that I've had.
With a team of professionals committed to advising students, the Career Office provides students with deep exposure to explore a diversity of career pathways.
The SAIS Career Services brings us really up close and personal with actual employers, with actual careers. Has shown me, okay, I really don't think that I could see myself working in this environment, but this is exciting. I want to apply for this.
Informative career treks to major European cities, London, Brussels, Amsterdam, Geneva, Rome, Vienna, and more, deliver insider perspective on target roles and key industries.
When people tell me that SAIS has a very close alum network, you really feel it, especially on career tracks. Whether you see an alum and no matter where you are, no matter what they have done, no matter how long, you can connect with them instantly.
Engaged alumni provide access to a robust professional network, supporting students through mentoring, informational interviews, and employer presentations.
And they came from such diverse backgrounds that there was something to gain from every person you talked to. And so it wasn't just theoretical and it wasn't just a name on your resume. It was real experience and relationships that I felt I could take with me wherever I go.
I definitely feel like it's going to give me opportunities to grow professionally and personally.
SAIS's targeted professional workshops and skill courses build practical professional development skills, giving our students a competitive edge when entering the workforce.
So if I put the benefits of SAIS in the network, there is a kind of career benefit to it, right? Which it opens doors, it allows you to get to places that you would otherwise not go to. That doesn't come in monetary terms, but it's worth every penny.
SAIS means natural connections that you can make with several people that you don't necessarily expect.
Our dedicated career services team guides students throughout their SAIS experience and beyond, effectively preparing students to achieve their professional goals while making a difference in the world.
Fantastic. So without further ado, Director Alan Fusetto of the Career Office, I throw it over to you.
Thank you, Daniela. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome again to SAIS and to this virtual presentation. Now, as you saw, we talk about career services. My name is Alan Fusetto. I'm the Director of Career Services at SAIS Europe, and I have the pleasure to work with two of my colleagues, Lucia and Silvia. They are connected as well, so I will give them the floor. Lucia.
Hi everyone, I'm Lucia Botindari and I'm the Associate Director of Career Services in SAIS Europe. Welcome to everyone.
Hello to everyone, my name is Silvia Bersani. I'm working in the Career Services team as coordinator. Thank you for joining us and for being with us today.
Thank you. We can go with the other slide. Okay, thank you, Daniela. So here, all our activities. So the aim of this presentation is to give you a glimpse of all our activities. And as you can see, the first activity is our professional development course. So we're going to start working together during the summertime. This is a basic course that's gonna give you all the information needed to then have the skills and the documents ready for working with us. It is composed by 3 modules. The first one is really about yourself, your skills, your strength, your weaknesses. Then we're gonna, the second module is more about your resume. So how to build a good resume, and specifically a SAIS good resume. And the third module is about networking. That's a very important activity you will do during your experience at SAIS. We, of course, gonna offer you one-on-one career counseling throughout all the year. With me and with Lucia, we are divided in different sectors and industries, and it's a good way to start tracing your career path and to build a realistic strategic career plan. As the video said, we also offer panels and professional workshops, really different topics on our workshops. So, for example, how to build LinkedIn profile, or how to nail an interview in different situations, salary negotiation, perfect pitch, and also career panels on different industries, energy, consulting, international organization, and so on. Also very, very important are skill courses. So skill courses basically are not credit-bearing courses, are not academic courses, but are courses offered and organized by the Career Service, really useful to make your resume more marketable. So as you know, we are in contact with the job market, with employers, with alumni, so we know what they are looking for. And so we offer this opportunity in 8-10 hours to get the basic of some important skills needed for the job market. For example, Stata, for example, Python, for example, Excel, or how to write in a policies report, for example. And we have more than 35 skill courses, included also our online skill courses. And then we have I would say, the hallmark of all our activities, so career tracks. Between us, DC and Nanjing, we have more than 20 sector-focused career tracks in Europe, Asia, and North America. So from SAIS Europe, we organize each year 8 career tracks in different European cities. London, for example, here we have 2 career tracks, one for the finance and the other one for the political risk career track. Then we have Geneva, where we visit international organizations. Then we have Brussels, of course, EU institution. We have Vienna for the World Bank, but also for the energy, for some of the energy companies in the region. And then we have the Netherlands with other international organizations, and then also 2 career tracks here in Italy, Rome and Milan. So basically, it's a great opportunity for you to enter into contact with the best employers throughout our alumni and HR and manager that are in contact with us. Last but not least, as you can see here, part of our job is to connect you with our alumni and employers. So we have a network of more than 20,000 alumni worldwide, and our alumni are really happy to meet you and to help you during your career at SAIS and beyond. So we're gonna organize different activities with them. One of the most important is the career days, just one day here in Bologna, in which we invite selecting number of alumni from different sectors and different cities also, and really doing activities with you throughout the day, okay? So one-on-one interviews, career panels, we organize also networking lunch. Of course, not now that is the COVID, but this is the structure of this event. And we also organize employer presentation, career talks with employer and alumni, and also another important event is our alumni weekend. That is, yes, more focused for our alumni, but we gather each year here in Bologna more than 500 alumni, and also we organize activities with them and also with students. Again, very small career session and meeting also one-on-one with you. So as you can see here from the slide, our big network really from all over the world. And so here in a nutshell, our activities. So now the aim also of this session is try to answer to your questions. So you saw the video before. I'm going to explain to you a little bit our activity. So we would be happy really to answer all the questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Alan.
You're welcome.
So for those of you that are joining in, we have about 10 minutes for Q&A. So this is the opportunity for our 70 or so participants online. Please do submit your question in the Q&A box, particularly as it relates to career services. You have the career team here on hand, and this is really an opportunity to ask your questions directly to them. As a practitioner's program, obviously there's a very heavy emphasis on career development. So I'm going to read the questions as they come in, and then Alan, feel free to let me know who on your team would be best placed to answer it.
Right.
The first question is, are there opportunities to get an internship while we are at SAIS Europe?
Okay, this is, I'm smiling because it's a topic we're discussing in this day, because so usually at SAIS Europe, we don't have a lot of internships while studying, okay, different from DC. Why? Because the program is very concentrated and basically students don't have time. And also usually our contacts in Europe and Italy, they prefer to have you for the summer. But this year, due to the COVID, actually we have different opportunities part-time remotely. So of course you can work on campus. So you can also work in our offices, because every year we give the opportunity to 3-4 students to help us, the career service, but also in other offices at SAIS. But then we could also have, yes, opportunity for part-time virtual internships also in other companies. Again, this year is much more frequent because everything is virtual, and so it is easier.
Alan, if I may, I'll also add that there are 2 research institutes at SAIS, the Bologna Institute for Policy Research and the Center for Constitutional Studies and Democratic Development, CCSDD. Yeah. I'll have Bianca put their contact information. They do take on students. It's paid positions, but it is a little bit of a resume builder. Occasionally, faculty members will ask for research assistants, particularly if they're publishing books. But as Alan eloquently said, the majority of our students use that summer period to do the majority of their internships. We have a really interesting question here. Of the percentage of students who go to work in the private sector after graduation, how many are successfully finding jobs in Europe versus the US versus other parts of the world?
Okay, so I think you have some statistics on the website, but in general, I would say that in general, 50% of students end up doing working in the private sector, and I would say that from SAIS Europe, most of students at the end up working in Europe for different reasons. Of course, it's not always easy due to the visa, but it is possible. Well, I would say that 20-25% of non-European students are able to usually to get a job in Europe. Of course, we can support you on that, especially at the beginning, because you have the internship, so we can do agreement with company that also support you to enter in the job market, and then so helping you then also with the visa at the beginning. But it's not impossible. So also the message is that also for American students, yes, it is possible then to enter working in the European market.
Thank you, Alan. We have another great question. Does SAIS offer mentorship matching with alumni and students?
Yes, we launched 2 years ago a program that is called Global Career Mentoring Program. That basically we also have a platform in which we have alumni that decided to help you and to coach you and to support you. And from the other side, we have all students interested to have, this relationship, long-term relationship, because it is a long-term relationship, okay? It is usually 1 year relationship in which you usually have 3-4 virtual meeting or also in-person meeting with our alumni. So you can choose the alum from the different sectors and send them your resume, and they of course we try to do the match, with the alum background and also with your background.
Thank you, Alan. We have a question that comes up quite frequently, and it says, do you also help with visa applications when you want to work to do an internship in China or the US as an EU citizen? So that is a question that comes up often. I don't know who wants to answer that one.
No, I'm going to answer. Right. I want to be clear. So we do not issue visas. So, but especially for internships, we can help you if you are able to find an internship through the school, because we have internship agreements. Okay, so through an internship agreement, usually companies are more flexible, and they can host you basically, despite maybe you don't have the visa to work. But then after the internship, I mean, the visa is something that you have to take care of. So maybe you have to understand how to get the visa. There are some employers, especially, big. Of course, international organization, it's easier because there is the visa problem, but also for private companies, especially the biggest private companies, they have strong offices that can support you with the visa. So if you perform very well during the internship, sometimes it would also happen that the company decide to extend you an offer and they take care about the visa. If you end up usually in a research center, think tanks, or small company, usually it's okay for an internship, so we can support you on that. But then, it could be a little bit more difficult with the visa, and then you have to find the best way to get the visa to work in the country.
Great. So we have time for 2 more questions, and they're actually pretty relevant and interesting questions. At the beginning of the presentation, Alan talked in detail about the different types of career tracks we have. Obviously, each city has a slightly different focus. The prospective student writes, are there any tracks that are designed for security strategy and statesmanship? So I guess if students are interested in security studies, what would be the career track that you would advise them to go on?
Okay, of course, my colleagues Lucia and Silvia, if you want to jump in the answer, feel free. We have a career track that is specifically for the risk, because also in Bologna we have a master in global risk. So we do a career track in London 2 days, which we visit also some of the major players in the risk, and also we have some private company dealing with security, risk/security. Then if you talk in general about security, it depends. We also visited the NATO, for example, and in Brussels during our career track in Brussels, where of course NATO is defense/security. So it really depends. So we can, of course, also each year we try to have also new employers on our career track. So, and also we ask suggestions to students. Listen, which company maybe you would like to have on the career track, and we can see if there are also a fit with our programs and the interest from our students.
Thank you.
Yes, Lucia.
Yeah, there is also a track in the US organized by one of our colleagues and the office there, which is the Houston one, and that is there are some departments specifically for security. So since we are global, all the career tracks are open to everyone. So it happens often that if the programs can work well, it happens also that students come to our track in Europe, as well as European students based in SAIS Europe go to career tracks in the US. So yeah, we have also that possibility.
That's a good point. Thank you, Lucia.
What kind of support would you offer for someone who's interested in a career in international journalism and communications?
So of course we support all students at the same time. In that case, so we don't have, of course, a specific track on journalism and communication, but we have alumni working in different employers, companies dealing with communication, for example. It depends also where you wanna go after SAIS, in which city and which type of communication. In Brussels, for example, we deal with also important employers who deal with communication, of course, communication more related to the European institutions, so European affair communication. It really depends. But again, we have a very strong network of alumni, and we are able to reach basically all of them, and so touch base to all sectors. I don't know if Lucia, you want to add something on that?
Yeah, also with international organizations. There are many alumni working in communication in international organizations. So, and it happened in the past that actually we went to visit them during the career tracks. I'm thinking about ITC, for example, in Geneva, and they actually offered many internship in communication at the ITC. So this is just to give another example. It's very varied, as Alan was saying.
I would like to add that also we host during the academic year several guest speakers. We have often journalists, like for example, next week we will host Paul Taylor. He's a Reuters journalist. So this will be also an occasion, an event open to all, and students can, of course, get in touch with the guest speaker and do the Q&As. So that's another opportunity.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. For those of you whose questions we can't get to, if there's a general career email, if I could ask you to put that in the chat box so that if they have a specific question that we couldn't get to, they can reach you. But otherwise, we have a question. How would SAIS Europe's Career Office offer advice for students who are interested in both being theorists and practitioners in their career paths? Maybe people at different stages in their lives. Would you have tools to help these students understand today's job markets, or does it tend to be more focused on a specific industry?
No, actually, as said, this is the reason why we have one-on-one career counseling, because, of course, we try to touch during our activities all the main career sectors, but of course through one-on-one career counseling, and we meet students, not just once during the year, but we can also meet 2, 3. It depends from your needs. So through one-on-one career counseling, we try to understand what you want to do, in which sector, what are your needs, your expectations, your skills, and since the beginning. So, and try to then help you, giving suggestion, giving tips, putting in contact with some alumni, for example, or giving general indication about also courses that you can maybe follow to strengthen your skill in that particular sector. So it really depends. It could be also one-on-one ad hoc, let's say, work that we do during the year.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank Alan, Lucia, and Sylvia for giving us an insider's view to the different resources for the Career Office. They've left their general email in the chat box. So I'm sorry that we weren't able to get to everybody's questions, but hopefully we've been able to give you a thorough overview of all that career has to offer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniela, and again, thank you to all of you who are here, and looking forward to see you next year.
Fantastic.
Thank you also, Lucia and Sylvia.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so we are now going to be transitioning into our information on the student life and student government. We're going to be inviting, there she is, Gabrielle Calabro, who is has a very difficult job, and she does it so well. She works extremely closely with all of our students, answering all of their needs. And so I'm going to throw it over to you, Gabby.
Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I wish we were all in the same room, but this will have to do for now, as we've been doing for quite a few months now. So I just want to talk to you a little bit today about my office, how I'm here to help you both in your transition to Bologna and eventually once you hopefully come here. And, you know, just really answer any questions you might have about what the student experience will look like here at SAIS Europe. So really today, I'm going to focus on giving you a rundown of what my office does, how I can help you during your time here. And I really just want to make sure we reserve ample time for your questions at the end. Because as we go into the next slide, you can see that my office handles quite a few different arenas of your experience here. You know, I'm your point person for any sort of emergency or crisis. You know, obviously COVID has made my role a little bit different this year, but I'm also your liaison to the Unibo and Bologna communities and the different opportunities that are available for you as a student. I organize clubs and student organizations as well as the student government. I'm their advisor. So really, one of the most exciting things about my job is that I get to work with you in such a broad array of capacities. And you know, really, these all take different importance to different people at different times of the year. So that's why I want to make sure that we leave time for questions, just so that you can really understand how I'm here to help and what my purpose is on campus. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I do want to talk a little bit about health insurance and kind of just our general approach to making sure that you have the resources needed to take care of your health and well-being while you're here. So as a Johns Hopkins student, you are entitled to use our student benefit plan. This is a health insurance plan that's provided by Wellfleet Insurance. It's very comprehensive. It's a year-long plan. We do allow students to not enroll in this plan if they already have insurance, normally from their parents or from their employers. Or if you happen to be a European Union citizen and you happen to be registered in your EU country's National Health Service, you can also waive. But this is a great plan that offers worldwide medical coverage. So the great thing about it is that obviously it'll cover you while you're here in Bologna, but no matter where your internship or academic excursion adventures take you, you have insurance coverage that will cover you. So the next thing, you know, I know that we have students who come here, you know, with a range of backgrounds, and, you know, I think wanting to know what their access to medical care will be while they're here in Bologna is quite important. So please know that we work very well with a number of English-speaking practitioners and specialists in Bologna. So no matter what your individual situation is, I'm sure that we can connect you with someone that can ensure that your care is continued while you're here. We're very fortunate to work closely with an American physician named Dr. Stephen Williams, who's really the point person for not only our students, but really any English-speaking student here in Bologna. He's an American physician that's been working here for almost 30 years at this point. And he's really kind of your gateway to really connecting with whatever practitioner you need. I'm available to go with you on appointments. I do this regularly. It's actually, you know, it's fun, and it's also an honor to be there with you and help translate if you need to, but just really to provide company. I'm a really good partner to go to medical appointments with. I bring magazines, I bring, you know, I bring interesting conversation topics. So I'm a good buddy to have. In addition, we also partner with the University of Bologna to offer 4 complimentary counseling appointments to students. These are with one of 2 English-speaking psychologists. Both are fabulous. And that, alongside the Johns Hopkins Student Assistant Program, which is a similar service, really ensures that students have access to a wide array of resources to, you know, help maintain their mental health during your year here. Finally, if you're a student with a disability or you've received accommodations in the past, my office is also the office that will help you get those during your time here. So I'm sure that for many of you, housing is a big topic. You want to know what your housing situation is going to look like. How do you find it? What does that experience entail? So the first thing to note is that students are responsible for finding their own housing. We really like to remind students that this is a process that's driven by them. And that's great because there's so many ways to find an apartment in Bologna that by allowing students to kind of take that lead, we can really ensure that there's going to be a high rate of satisfaction with whatever accommodation they find. During a normal year, the housing market in Bologna is a little bit competitive, but the takeaway is that there are so many ways to find housing in Bologna, and as long as you're planning ahead of time and you're a little bit flexible in terms of your priorities, or you're really careful about identifying what those priorities are, you can certainly find your dream Bolognese apartment here. Our students have lived in a variety of accommodation types. I've listed 4 of the most popular ones. So we have a number of student residences here in Bologna. These are companies or hybrid hotel residence facilities that offer kind of an environment that's very similar to a university residence hall for students. We work very closely with a number of property managers. So these are, students would work with these professionals to find their own private or shared apartment with students. We also work with a number of medium-term rental companies. So this is like Airbnb or some companies that are local to Italy or to Bologna that offer, again, a private apartment with kind of a all-inclusive price, so your utilities, your cleaning fees, everything is charged in one. And, key takeaways here, again, are everyone ends up very satisfied with their housing. We survey students quite carefully. A few months into their arrival, everyone always reports high levels of satisfaction with the housing that they find. There's multiple ways to find it. If you're looking for a ballpark figure in terms of financial planning, you should expect to pay around 600 to 800 euro for a private bedroom in a shared apartment. You might pay less than this, depending on the location and what amenities you'd like. You might pay a little bit more, but this is a good frame of reference. If you like a studio or a 1-bedroom, you're looking at starting around 800 euro per month, utilities included. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is just to give you a sense of where most of our students live. So you see, when we talk about the Centro Storico, or the historic center of Bologna, we're really talking about this area that's in these yellow parameters, kind of this strange hexagon. This is the city center, and you can see most of our students live within here. So we're talking a 10-minute walk, a 10-minute bike ride, depending on where they are exactly. So our students live very close. Bologna, one of the best things about it is that it is a very bustling city, but at the same time, it's very accessible. So really at any of these points, you can get to school quite quickly. You're well connected to kind of the student areas of the city and the parks. So you see our students, they have an experience that allows them to live within the city walls. Most of the time they're living with each other, but we really encourage students to just kind of use the entire map of Bologna as their radius, just because sometimes you can get cheaper deals the farther you go into, the closer you go to the city walls. So I mentioned that student residences are quickly popping up here in Bologna, and one of the most exciting ones that's new to us is the student hotel. We currently have about 30 students living here. This is a hybrid hotel, guest hotel and student residence facility. It's very chic. The student hotel is a European franchise, so they have locations all throughout Europe. And when they told us that they were going to be opening up their latest location in Bologna, we were quite excited. We toured the one in Florence. We've toured the one in Amsterdam. So we knew what type of caliber their services were. Like I said, it's quite chic. It reminds me of, the W Hotel almost. But like I said, this has been a great new partner to us. We have about 30 students who are staying there, and the great thing about it is it comes with a beautiful gym and pool. So we anticipate for your arrival in August that you'll really get to use the most of their facilities, and this is a great cost-effective way to ensure yourself housing, have a really diverse population around you that expands from beyond just SAIS students, and like I said, for the price of living, you also get access to a gym membership and to a pool as well. So, you know, I know that COVID is more than the elephant in the room. It's really all that we can talk about. And of course it has, you know, it's changed the way that, that our school year has looked, especially from a student life, student event standpoint this year. I'm happy to answer any and all of your questions about our response to COVID, how, you know, what that effect has looked like when we finish this presentation. But as we know, things change so much, and we're really hopeful and optimistic that the experience that you'll have in August will be much similar to what we're used to and much more traditional. So it might be unrealistic of me, it might be overly optimistic, but I'm going to talk about some signature events that we have on campus that you can look forward to, with a hope that we're going to be able to offer you something very similar in August when hopefully you're here. So the first is our Thanksgiving dinner. Obviously this, looking at it now, looks like the definition of a super spreader event. So it was canceled this year, and you know, admittedly, it's a lot of work. So I mean, it's not such a bad idea that it was canceled this year and that we took a break. But I'm so excited to have it again for you. You know, this is an event where we cater 12 huge turkeys, and everyone brings a side, and it's a lovely event to just kind of share this tradition here in Italy. So you can see it's a very festive time. The second exciting thing that you can look forward to hopefully next year is ball season. As a cohort, we pretty much do a cohort full field trip to Vienna for a week of career treks, cultural treks. I take students to the Belvedere Museum. As you can see, we have a private waltz lesson at one of the most prestigious studios in Vienna, and everything ends with the Vienna Ball. So you can see it here. We have the Vienna Ball at the Rat House. I'm trying not to cry as I look at these slides, because unfortunately the Vienna Ball was canceled this year, but they have Cinderella, or your fairy tale of choice, you pick. But okay, so moving on to the next slide. We do, you know, we, like I said, mental health and helping you maintain a sense of levity while you're here, I view as one of the most important aspects of my job. Last year, we had a Pups and Brews event where we brought therapy dogs to campus. You know, for those of you who have had experience at an American university or, you know, institution of higher education, these events might be, you know, you might be used to them. And a fun challenge for me is always trying to translate things that our students might be accustomed to in the United States to events here. So getting therapy dogs on campus was a project that was years in the making, and now we have it. So I hope to repeat that for you once you're here too. As I mentioned, another portion of my job is working closely with student involvement opportunities. So the premier way to be involved on campus is through our Student Government Association. As you can imagine, the SGA plays a really vital role in serving as the student voice of the administration. During a typical year, they also plan a lot of signature events for students, and they help me manage the student clubs and organizations process. We also host a number of really exciting student organizations each year. So even though we have a cohort that typically ranges around 180 students, we offer at least 25 clubs each year. These are typically grouped in professional and academic areas of interest, but we also have a number of affinity groups and special interests. So for example, we always have, here being in Bologna, we always have a wine and cheese club. We have a culinary club. We have a student diversity coalition. We have clubs that really align with a lot of the professional interests that our students have as well. And if there's something on that list that you find is lacking, you know, you have your own interests that you want to pursue, we also give you the opportunity to start your own club as well. And one of the best things I think about being a SAIS Europe student is not only do you get to benefit from having this really close, intimate community among your own cohort and the SAIS Europe community itself. But you also are in the middle of a very vibrant and bustling student community that's given to us by being so close to the University of Bologna. Unibo has on average around 60,000 students enrolled here in Bologna. And with that comes a host of involvement opportunities that are not just fun, but perfect for a university student while you're here. So obviously the first thing that comes to mind with this partnership is there are a lot of sports and recreation activities that as a SAIS student you can join in. So we always have intramural soccer teams, intramural basketball teams, and this is a great way for you to expand your connection base here and get out of the SAIS bubble. We really encourage you to get out into the Bologna community early, make that effort early on, because we find that students have a much more balanced year this way and a much more enriching experience when they get involved in Bologna. Another exciting opportunity is Dine Home, which actually is still going on despite COVID right now. Dine Home is for students who might have craved a homestay opportunity, but without the commitment. This is a service that matches you with local families so that you can have dinner once a week during your time here. This is something that every student who does it raves about it. So it's one of the rare things that we do that has a 100% success rate. It really, this is one of our students, Allison, on the right-hand side, who with her Italian host sister, and this is a lovely experience for you. So put this on your radar early because it's quite popular. And as such, being in a university community with a lot of international students, there are tandem language groups galore. So, for those of you who want to take a language, I know that you spoke a lot with Professor Giometti today about the language program. So you can take your language here at SAIS Europe, but then there are so many language tandem groups for not just Italian, but really any language that individuals have to offer that you can practice in your spare time. So all good opportunities for you to keep on your radar. So at this point, I think I hit the high notes and the most important points of our presentation, but please ask any questions that you have, and I'm here, so we can start.
Thank you. So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'll let Gabby moderate the Q&A. I just want to encourage people, please submit your questions in the Q&A box. We have about 15 minutes or so to work with Gabby on all of her questions, and so I would encourage you to submit them. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Gabby.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much. So I see the first question is from Raphael, and it's, has SAIS Europe have an interest and possibly connections already within the United Nations? I'm sure there's interest, and every year we have different iterations of student clubs that that are formed around that interest. In terms of connections, I'm not sure if you're referring to alumni or professional opportunities. That might be a question that, like for example, my colleague Alan might be better handled to answer, or Daniela, feel free to jump in. But I'm sure we have connections and definitely interests.
For that question, I would definitely encourage you to submit it to Alan. As Alan's slide mentioned, we have 100 and we have alumni in over 140 countries and over 20,000 alumni. So if you specifically want to know a little bit more about how we work with the United Nations, I would encourage you to submit that question to Alan.
Thanks. The next question. Have students have pets accommodated? Can you bring them? Yes, you can. We have students every year who bring their pets. This year we have 3 separate students who have brought their dogs. The same itinerary that you'd follow, the same action steps you'd take if you were moving anywhere, you should follow here. So a number of our property managers manage pet-friendly properties, but maybe, as you get closer to your arrival time, communicating early, with prospective landlords is advised. I'm certainly here to help you in terms of making the flight arrangements. That's something I have personal experience with, but I've also helped students with. But yes, please bring your pets. If anything, for my benefit, bring your pets. Okay. So the next question is, how big is the Master of Arts and International Relations cohort? Daniela, do you mind answering that?
Sure. So we're actively recruiting for this cohort. I can't answer that question until May 1st, but I will say it will be on par to what our normal MA has historically been. I would say that we usually have about 185 to 200 students on campus. Our MA cohort is usually the largest. I would say we usually have about 110 students in that program, but it doesn't matter if you're in the MAIR, MAIA, MAGR. There are opportunities, obviously, to take courses and electives with each other, but we are looking, that is still going to be one of our larger cohorts, but I'll be able to answer that question after May 1st.
Thanks so much. So the next question is, if we're residents but not citizens of a European Union nation and have that nation's public health coverage, will it still be valid in Bologna? This isn't quite an easy answer, and I'll say that it's very situational. So I encourage you, please get in touch with me and we'll go over your particulars. In general, we require that non-European nationals either enroll in the Wellfleet plan or a similar plan, because our main goal is just to make sure that you have adequate care here and in the European Union and in the country from which you're coming. So depending on what that looks like for you, the answer might be different, but please reach out to me and we can talk about that privately. So the next question from Stephen is, does SAIS Europe help international students find jobs locally so they can maintain their financial independence? I'd say that we definitely have a robust on-campus employment system here. We have a lot of opportunities for students to work on campus. And you know, we have international students working here. We have non-US students in that regard. We have, you know, American students working in campus. I'd say that most of our students do not hold jobs in addition to working here just due to visa restrictions, and honestly, they're overwhelmed. I mean, you're going to be busy. But we have had students who have found ways to supplement their income by babysitting or teaching English is a big one. So, you know, there's a lot of paying, you know, English teaching opportunities on campus that I certainly advertise to students as they come. But I'd say that's really how my office plays into that. So the next question is, does the Office of Student Life help with visa matters that are a little bit more complicated than normal, or is this something that we would need to deal with on your own? I'd say that the Office of Admissions will help guide you with visa matters that are more complicated. They have a lot of experience. I don't necessarily work with visas, but I do help you with your residency permit application once you come here, and those processes are a little bit intertwined. So we do help, just a different office, and you're in good hands with that, and much better hands than mine, because I don't know that much about visas. So the next question is, have there been many students in the past who arrived at SAIS Europe with their families and spouses? Absolutely, yes. You know, I think that our admissions office does a great job of helping partners come with their you know, students bring their partners here. You know, we every year we have at least a family or two that also has their children here. That's certainly something that we can help with. You know, obviously we just ask that you get in touch with us early so we can make sure that that transition is smooth, and we can just see what your needs are. But yes, absolutely. Again, please bring your babies, because if anything, it'll be for my benefit. So the next question is from Raphael. Hi, can partners participate in the events you mentioned? Are there other specific events for them to get involved in the community? Absolutely, yes. So in general, most of the partners who come here are able to come on a student visa if they enroll in one of our language courses. And as such, really, your partner has all of the opportunities that a student has. So really the only time that we make the distinction, you know, in terms of what events they can come to or not is occasionally if we have a dignitary on campus and we know that attendance will be quite high, and we might have to be selective about who is able to fit in the auditorium, we might limit that to full-time students. But in general, your partners are welcome to everything. Definitely all of the events that I mentioned here. So please come to Thanksgiving, please come to the ball. That's fine, that's very normal, and we really want them to be a part of their community. I'd say that sometimes, a lot of times, the partners who come here end up having more of a social connection with the cohort than even the students do. I think they really get enmeshed here, and some of those opportunities, like teaching English, they really take advantage of here. So Camille is asking, our next question is, How much per month would a housing option like the student hotel be? You know what? They have a wide array of options there. It depends on, are you living with someone? Are you living on your own? They have a few divisions of private rooms, different luxury levels. I think it starts around 400 euro and the highest option is around 800 euro, everything included. So when you think of the fact that that includes your utilities, that includes a gym membership, a pool membership, it's quite a great deal. And like I said, we have around 30 students living there, but their information should be in this presentation. Happy to give you their info and you can get a quote from them yourself. So the next question is, do you encourage students to bring in new ideas to make student organizations that you may not have? Of course, we have a fairly easy process to start a new club. You basically fill out a Google form and just point out 5 friends that you're interested in making this club with, and that's it. What I'll say is, I think that one of the beautiful things about studying here is that not only are you able to take advantage of all the opportunities that SAIS has to offer in general, but you're doing it in Bologna. And I know for many of you, this is your first time in the city, so you're having a study abroad experience alongside it. So what I'll say is clubs, I think everyone starts very strongly with clubs with a strong interest, but they take on a different role as the year goes on because you have Bologna, to explore. And, so yes, we do encourage you to make new clubs. We also encourage you to get out and enjoy the community, enjoy Italy too. So am I okay on time? Do I have time to answer these next 3? Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. So the next question is a great one. So would you say that there are resources in Bologna, products in the supermarkets or restaurant offerings for people who are vegetarian or vegan or have other dietary restrictions or allergies? I'd say yes, absolutely. And I'd say that, in my 4 years that I've been working here and in the 10 years or so since I've studied abroad, I'd say that Bologna in Italy has made big strides here. There are aisles full of gluten-free offerings. I think that the community has become very adept at welcoming and being inclusive of people who have different, just different diets and different dietary needs. We have a lot of halal shops in the area. So absolutely yes. This again might be a question that I encourage you to get in touch with me individually, and we can see exactly what options you'd have. But in short, yes. So Raphael is asking, what are the monthly rates for options such as, studios or homestays? It would be quite hard for you to find specific rates right now. I think that 600 to 800 euro range is really good for you to plan. Only because I think that way you're well prepared for a number of options once you come here. And what I'll say is, you get so much information about housing from the moment that you matriculate here. So the moment that you've decided that you're coming to SAIS Europe, which I hope is everyone on this call, we just, by we, I mean me, I'm sorry in advance, we just inundate you with housing information. And what you'll find is your arrival date and when you're expecting to arrive will in large part dictate what options are available to you. Because as we get closer into September each year, traditionally the housing market becomes a little bit more competitive. So I'd say for right now, if you focus on 600 to 800 euro a month, you'll be well prepared for whatever option you'd like. So the next question is, how much Italian do you need to get by going around the city of Bologna? Would you say that most people we meet speak both English and Italian or only Italian? Is there any kind of intro Italian class offered as a part of student orientation? This is a great question. So what I'll say is most of our students come here with very little Italian. You do have the option to take intensive or survival level Italian as part of preterm, which I think are both great tools. There are a million ways to brush up or practice your Italian while you're here. As I mentioned, there's a huge tandem language culture. There's so many people who'd be willing to help you with this here, and it's a great way to get to know the community. What I'd say is, Bologna is a bustling city. It's a city that has, like I said, a vibrant international community, thanks to Unibo. But, I think a lot of your interactions will be in Italian, but Bolognese are friendly. I think if you just make a little bit of an effort, they'll meet you more than halfway. And I think it'll be a fun adventure for you. So don't worry about not having Italian when you come here. You can't help but absorb some of it because so many people are speaking it around you, but there's also opportunities that we offer to help with that as well. So the last question is, do you offer free sports classes like martial arts? I don't personally, which is probably for everybody's benefit. As I mentioned before, we're really lucky to have a partnership with the University of Bologna, and through there, students can actually pay like €13 a year to become a member to a lot of the offerings that they have. There are so many sports and recreation activities that are available to you. I actually think one of the silver linings of COVID is that there are a lot of fitness groups that have picked up in the parks here, and just kind of these organic groups to come together. So I'm sure we can find you a martial arts class that, if not free, is quite low cost. Okay.
Fantastic. Gabby, you were wonderful. Thank you so much for being available for our students. Gabby's email is there. She's a wonderful resource for you, and you'll be hearing lots from her, particularly after students decide to matriculate. So thank you so much, Gabby, for today's session. We really appreciate it. So with that note, we are going to our next panel. It's actually the last panel of the evening. It's the admissions information session Q&A. So once again, I'm going to reintroduce myself if you're just joining us this afternoon. My name is Daniela Coleman. I'm the Director of Admissions in SAIS Europe. I'm going to let my colleague Bianca introduce herself.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Bianca Belli. I'm the Admissions Coordinator here at SAIS Europe.
And we are a team. We are the two people that are going to be answering all of your questions. Bianca, mostly via email. But if you've been with us throughout the day, we are sure that you have tons of questions for us. So what we're going to do is I have a 10-minute presentation. It's very general. It's just talking a little bit about important information. I'm going to get through that, and then we're going to open up the floor for all the Q&A. So with that, I do want to spend a moment talking about dates and deadlines. If you've come up to this point, I'm assuming that you may have had a chance to look at our website. You may have had a chance to attend one of our other virtual sessions, but I do want to specifically speak about dates and deadlines. I do want to give a plug to some of the research institutes that have been mentioned today, as well as just a brief overview of the SAIS Europe programs that I have no doubt that you've familiarized yourself with. But most importantly, we are going to leave ample time for your questions. So with that note, upcoming deadlines. So for those of you that are currently in our early admissions application, so this meant that you had submitted an application by November 1st, you've been interviewed already. For those of you that are in this category, you will find out the status of your application on December 18th. For everybody else who is thinking of submitting an application, in the process of putting an application, just remember that the deadline for the regular admissions round is January 7th. Now, again, whether you're applying by January 7th or you've applied by the early admissions deadline, we will inform candidates that have been admitted of their financial aid package on March 5th. So for those of you that are admitted on December 18th, you will only find out what your financial aid allocation is on March 5th with the regular round candidates. So the regular round candidates on the same day, they're going to find out if they've been admitted. And if they've been admitted in a separate email, they're going to find out where their financial aid. If you do want to be considered for financial aid, make sure that you tick that box on your application and that you separately send us in the financial aid form on February 15th. If you don't know what the financial aid form is, I will have Bianca put it in the chat box. You did fill out some of this information on your application, but we actually need to see tax documents. If particularly because there are some of our scholarships that are based on need. So that is a separate application. It just needs to be filled out, sent to a separate email by February 15th. And of course, for those of you that are Masters in European Public Policy, that is a rolling application deadline. Once you submit, we interview you and usually find out within a month if you've been admitted, and then we give you 30 days to confirm your matriculation. But for everybody else So for all our other programs except for MEPP, you will have either until April 20th if you received funding, or May 1st if you didn't receive funding, to accept your offer. And accepting your offer obviously means accepting your offer in the portal and paying a $500 matriculation fee. We've spoken about the Bologna Institute for Policy Research, and I'll get into one of the sessions that is being held this evening, but I do want to give a plug for the Center for Constitutional Studies and Democratic Development. It is a research partnership between the University of Bologna Law Program and SAIS Europe. They organize a number of different interesting study tracks in the field of comparative constitutional law. They historically organize a trip to Sarajevo right after the winter recess. And we do have the director of the program, Professor Justin Frazzini. I'll have Bianca put his bio in the chat box. He does teach courses at SAIS Europe, and I hope that you have the pleasure of taking one of his courses, as well as Sarah Mancini, who works with him at the Center for Constitutional Studies and Democratic Development. We've spoken about BEEPR, the Bologna Institute for Policy Research. This is, again, a research institute affiliated with SAIS Europe. You can also they do hire students throughout the year. They organize a number of different seminar series. Obviously, because of the pandemic, the current seminar series are being offered virtually. This is this evening's seminar series. So for those of you that want to get a better sense of what they do, tonight's seminar at 6:30 Central European Time, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, is on specifically global risk. It is a separate registration site. Bianca has put that in the chat box. So if you do want to attend the Zoom link, we encourage you to do so. Just click on the link. It's being moderated by Professor Eric Jones, who is the director of the Masters of Arts in Global Risk and teaches here at SAIS Europe. And he was one of our panelists in our faculty panel. This is a very general overview of the master's programs at SAIS Europe. We've had extensive sessions about our programs, but I do want to spend about 30 seconds because sometimes students are a little confused between the programs. So this is just a general overview. If you have very specific questions, we can address them in the chat, in the Q&A, I should say. The chat is just the chat, the Q&A is for the questions. So here at SAIS Europe, obviously the new program is the Masters of Arts in International Relations. That is a 2-year program. You can either do 2 years in Washington or do your first year in Bologna and your second year in DC. For those of you that want to do that first year in Bologna, make sure on the application you check the box SAIS Europe first year. This is a program that focuses on core courses, functional area, a regional area, as well as a foreign language requirement. The other program that's offered only in Bologna is the Masters of Arts in International Affairs. This is also a 2-year program, so you can do 2 years in Bologna, or you're currently a student at one of our cooperative degrees. While you're a student at one of our cooperative degrees, you apply to us. If you're admitted, we recognize the credits of the cooperative degree and you spend the second year with us. This program is a little bit more flexible. You have the option to do a thesis. It obviously is more research focused, and there is also a foreign language requirement. So if English is not your native language, you just need to pass English proficiency. If you're a native English speaker, you need to pass a foreign language. So if you're coming to us from SOAS and you're only going to spend a year at SAIS Europe, you're going to need to meet foreign language proficiency by the time you finish with us. So just something to be aware of. We also have a 13th month program, the Masters of Arts in Global Risk. This is this program that works specifically on political risk analysis. And the beauty of this program, it has a summer start. You take a variety of different classes. You do have the opportunity to take electives with other students, but you finish your coursework in May, and you then do a capstone internship. Usually it's about 4 months. We've had students do a variety of different capstone projects. I'll have Bianca put in the chat some of the students in our student stories that have done the MAGR program, so you can get an idea of some of the student profiles. A new program that we've launched this year is our Masters of Arts in European Public Policy. Again, this also has a summer start. This is the only program that's rolling, meaning the sooner you apply, the sooner you hear from us whether you've been admitted. But if you have been admitted, we do require you to decide within 30 days of admission whether or not you're going to accept the offer. It is a program that's specifically focused for students that want to work in and around the institutions of the EU, or obviously bilateral relationships with the EU. The beauty of this program is that it's actually taught by Professor Michael Lee. I'll have Bianca put his bio in the chat box. He worked for DG Enlargement in very senior roles, and he is the academic director of the program, and he also organizes a career track specifically to Brussels. For those of you that have 7 or more years of full-time work experience, you may be interested in our Masters of Arts in Public Policy. It's a very flexible curriculum. It's 1 year. You can basically take whatever course you want. If you are interested in taking econ courses, you just have to make sure that you have the prerequisites for that, and that is a 1-year program. We also do offer a diploma, which is different from the MIPP. The diploma is anybody can apply to that. You don't need to have the previous work experience, and that also is a flexible curriculum. And then the last program I do want to mention is that students can take courses in our DIA, which is a Doctorate in International Affairs. This is different than doing a 4-year PhD program that you want to end up going and being a professor. If your goal is to teach at a university, this is not the program for you. This is a practitioner's program. So this is a program that's interested for individuals that want to become practitioners. If you have a previous relevant master's program, you can apply to this program, and then that would just require a year of full-time coursework followed by a second year doing research. If you don't have a previous master's programs, then you do need to be enrolled for 3 years. And this is a very unique program. It's offered both in Washington and obviously here in Bologna as well. So with that note, just briefly, we want you to stay in touch with us, whether it's through emails, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, even on LinkedIn. We are present everywhere. And I know that, and particularly our Instagram account, we post a lot of different stories. So if you haven't joined our SAIS Instagram feed, I would strongly encourage you to do that. We're constantly posting about the fun things that we're doing here in Bologna, but also very interesting student and professor of profiles as well. And with that note, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And this is the part of the presentation that we're actually going to go into the Q&A. So I'm going to invite Bianca to moderate the questions. And as she reads out the questions, she and I are going to play a little bit of a tag team depending on who's best placed to answer this. So we have about 20 minutes. So we're going to go straight into your Q&A. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Bianca, to read the questions.
Thank you. Yes, the first question is about financial aid. And the student asked, if we are above the age 24, not a dependent, and do not currently have parental financial support, what documents are necessary to apply for financial aid? Just our own tax documents?
Yes. So if you're financially independent, you would then submit your own tax documents, and we would look at that as, and then obviously on that form, when you talk about what you make and what you can contribute, we would take into account your personal finances.
The next question is by Victoria. And can you start enrolled with a Maya and then apply for the cooperative degree at a partner university, or does it only work the other way around?
So that's a great question. We have on December 15th, I'll have Bianca put in the chat box, a informative session it's our last recruiting session of the year about the cooperatives. The deal with the cooperatives is that for some programs, order counts. So obviously your goal is to want to get a master's from us. So if you are applying to us and you start our first year with us, and then you want to go to SOAS or McGill after, that's fine, because that's a program where order does not count. So for SOAS and McGill in Montreal, order does not count. Whether you start with them or start with us and then apply, you get the master either way. For our other programs, so for example, the University of Bologna, apart from the economics faculty, for Leiden, for the Diplomatic Academy of Vienna, and for Sciences Po, you need to start at those programs and then spend the second year with us. And if you do that, you will get the master's degree. So if you start at Sciences Po and end with SAIS, you get both masters. If you start with Leiden and then end at SAIS, you get both masters. If you start from Unibo and end at SAIS, you get both masters, apart from the economics, which you can start at either. Diplomatic Academy, if you start at the DA and you end at SAIS, you get just the SAIS masters. If you start at Bologna and then you go to the DA, you get the Bologna diploma and the DA masters. So in a nutshell, order doesn't matter for SOAS, McGill, and the economics department at Unibo. For all other programs, order matters. Hopefully I've answered your question.
Thank you. Next question is by Eleonora, who's currently attending the first year at Real at Unibo. Her question is, when would the time for enrollment start and end? On the website says fall 21. Can you be more specific, please?
Sure. So for anybody who ends up starting a course with SAIS Europe, we're specifically for someone in the Unibo Laurea Magistrale, we're going to assume that if you're admitted into SAIS, that you've finished all your exams for that first year. And by the time that you start with us, so we technically, our fall semester usually starts around mid-September. We do have a preterm sort of before classes start, and preterm is usually mid-August. Preterm is optional, except if you've been required to do English preterm. So if you do want to come to preterm, some of you will be required because your English, we're concerned about your English level. But for other students, you may just come to preterm because you want to do Italian, or you may want to get a head start in micro. So the actual academic year for the Maya and the MAIR program begins in mid-September. The academic year for the MEPP and the MAGR begins mid-August. And then obviously there's the optional preterm, except if you've been required to do preterm English.
Thank you. Next question by Krasimira is, first question, do you offer full scholarships? And if yes, on what conditions?
We rarely offer for scholarships. I would say that most students that are interested in applying to SAIS look at a variety of different means to fund their education. I would encourage you to apply to us. I also want you to be realistic about managing expectations. I would say a strong financial aid package from SAIS Europe could cover up to half tuition. What most students do is they try to see how much money they can get from us. They definitely look at external sources of funding. I will have Bianca put in the chat box a list of external sources of funding. This is by no means extensive. Maybe your home country has a funding scheme that we're not aware of. So students try to see how much money they can get from us. They look at external sources of funding, ministries, nonprofit organizations. Sometimes they also look into loan schemes. They also look into some savings. Occasionally, also, we do hire students on campus, and that's usually nice money to maybe cover some rent. So it's a variety of different resources. I would say every year, out of the 200 students that we have, we really only have 1 to 2 scholarships, depending on donors, that may cover full tuition. So I'm not saying that to discourage you. I would encourage you to apply. There's no cost for our application, but I would also just be very aware that it's very important for you to manage your expectations and to also plan financially.
Thank you. The next question by Rasmina is, what kind of degree is a DIA offered by GHU in Washington? Do you offer the same in Bologna? And can one start with a DIA and then continue to your PhD?
Sure. So I briefly did talk about the DIA in my last slide. The DIA is a doctorate in international affairs. It is a practitioner's doctorate. So what this means is, if you want to go for a PhD and teach at a university, this is not the program you do. You go straight into a PhD program, and that is a completely separate application. It means that you're going to have it's usually 4 years. There is a PhD program that's offered at SAIS. It's specifically in Washington. You go to Washington. You do have the potential in your 4th year to come do research at either Nanjing or SAIS Europe. But a PhD is a doctorate in philosophy. And that is what you want to do if you want to become a professor. If you're looking at being a practitioner, meaning I'm going to work at the World Bank, I'm going to work at the UN, I don't necessarily need an academic PhD, but I do want to have a practitioner's. We do offer this on both of our campuses. It's a separate application process. I'll have Bianca put the document requirements. The deadline for this is January 7th. The program is either 2 years full-time or 3 years full-time, depending on where you are. So if you don't have any prior masters, then you would be accepted and it would be a 3-year program. The first 2 years that you take courses, And the third year, you're actually doing research before writing your thesis. Some of you may have some relevant masters. So maybe you already did a master's in international relations and you apply to the DIA. If you're accepted, then it's only 2 years full time, of which 1 year is coursework and the second year is research. So let me give you an example. You could be a student in our Maya program and you finish the Maya program with us, and then you want to apply to the DIA because you're looking to do a doctorate in international affairs to become a practitioner. At that point, you would then, if admitted, you'd only have to do 2 years because you already have a master's with us. So hopefully I've demystified the differences between the PhD program and the DIA.
Thank you. Next question is about options for work during studying. So the career services mentioned the possibility to work on campus.
Sure. So obviously the majority of the students, when they get to SAIS, they're very involved in student life, the campus here. I would say about 90% of the students do a summer internship. If you're looking for on-campus employment, so this is something because you are looking to subsidize your income, there are a variety of opportunities and it varies. So we hire students to work in our library. We hire students to work in alumni relations. We hire students to work at the Bologna Institute for Policy Research, BEEPR, the CCSDD, variety of different administrative offices. So those are positions that are paid. You can work up to 15 hours a week, depending on the office. So some offices have very strict working hours. So obviously if you're hired to work in the library, and they tend to hire students that are here for preterm, you have a shift and you got to show up, and that's the shift. Other offices are a little more flexible, obviously, but those are jobs that you apply for. So after you matriculate and decide that you want to come to SAIS, there's a very elaborate admitted website, and we actually talk a lot more in detail about those positions. And then once you're admitted into SAIS, you actually have a job portal where you can apply to these positions. You can apply to these positions while you're a student at SAIS Europe. For those of you that end up going to Washington, D.C., you can also apply to those positions in D.C.
Next question, can we apply if we don't have any work experience and do not have a background in international relations?
Yes, so we take a very holistic approach. Obviously, if you are an engineer or you're a linguist or a law or coming from a science background, that's great that you have an interest in international relations. I would say that, there are things that you're going to have to address. So, you do have the opportunity to write a statement of purpose. So if you've studied biology and you ended up, doing biology as your undergraduate degree, and now you want to do international relations, it's fine to pivot, but you're going to have a story. You're going to have a narrative to tell. You're going to also have to submit an analytical essay on an issue of international or economic significance. So I assume that you are comfortable writing. I'm assuming that you're passionate about politics or passionate about world affairs. And that's when the interview is also going to be very useful, because you're going to be able to talk about in the interview, a little bit more about yourself. It is important for us to have students that have economics. Now, if you're still an undergrad, I would strongly encourage you to begin taking an introductory to macro and an introductory to micro. Because for those of you that apply to the Maya program or the MAIR program, these are actually going to be requirements for enrollment. So you can apply without them, but if you are admitted into SAIS before you set foot in this building, you're going to have to meet those requirements. And there are different ways that you can do that. Some students take an online course that we offer in the spring, Online Principles. And I'll have Bianca put in the chat. That's a virtual course. I've done it. You normally do that sort of from May to August virtually. You're going to need to get at least a B-, and it is about 10 hours a week of work. Sometimes students want to take other online courses. That's fine. Or they want to take other courses at a local community college. That's fine. You just need to check with us that the course that you want to enroll in meets our prerequisites. So something else that we look for specifically for students that have strong liberal arts backgrounds, it's okay that if you're a French major or you did philosophy, we do want to believe that you can do math. So it is a question that we ask. If you don't have any, stats or calculus, it is something that you're going to have to be prepared to address. And if you have nothing in your application that can attest to that, that's why it's sometimes useful to start thinking about taking those online courses.
Thank you. Next question. What percentage of people accepted the program are career changers coming from a field that seems unrelated to IR?
Well, so if you have 2 to 4 years of work experience, I can't quantify it, but I would say it's a sizable amount. So there are 3 sort of different types of students that apply to SAIS. They're the people that are junior and they realize they need a master's to get to the next level in their career. So sometimes they're coming to us directly from undergraduate, although we prefer that you have 2 to 4 years of work experience, and they're doing this master's degree because they want to get farther in their career. There are people, the career changers, these are people that have done something completely different and they realize they have a passion for IR and they want to come to us. And then we have individuals that are mid-career professionals that need our degree because they either want to fine-tune their skills or, you know, they've been out of school for a number of years and they want to come back because of the learning opportunities. For those of you that are submitting questions in the chat box, please submit your questions in the Q&A because that's where we're going to be reading the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Is there a concentration that SAIS Europe better caters to?
I'm sorry, could you read that question again, please?
Yeah, is there a concentration or a focus area that SAIS Europe caters better to?
So we cater to everything. I wouldn't say, I think the beauty of being a student in our program is obviously some of you, depending on your program, are going to have some core courses that you're going to need to take. You're going to have electives. You can take courses in functional areas, regional areas. I think that the thing to bear in mind is, and as if you've been able to attend our morning session, is that we have expertise in everything. We have practitioners that fly in from European capitals. We have resident faculty that teach in a number of different areas. There's a lot. And so, you know, whatever your interests are, I can guarantee that we will have a course. Obviously, we can't have classes that are too niche, but that's why, you know, in the evening, we have the Bologna Institute for Policy Research that also gives you opportunities to have more exposure. So I don't think it's us being better or worse. I think it's just the beauty of being in Europe, the proximity to this geographic area and the opportunity to study with a global network of faculty.
And so what do you look for in applicants coming shortly after their undergraduate studies with few work experience?
So I know I harp on work experience, and the reason being is that, you know, when you graduate from college, a lot of you have had a very theoretical education. You know, maybe you've done some summer internships, and I hope that you've done that. But a lot changes. You know, it's very different to maybe take a class on American government and then, you know, do an internship for a senator or work for a think tank. You learn a lot about yourself. And so if you don't have that full-time work experience and you want to come straight here, it means that we're going to have a disproportionate focus on your grades. We're going to have to look at, you know, the volunteering that you've done. You're going to have to make a very strong case by saying to us, I am passionate about conflict management and I want to devote my career to the UN. My question to you is, but you've never done an internship in the UN. How do you know that you want to work for the UN? So you're going to have to be prepared to make a very strong case if you don't have a lot of work experience, why you want to go straight to graduate school.
So under what circumstances do we allow for deferral after an application has been accepted?
So we do grant deferrals. It's on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, if money is going to be an issue, I would encourage you not to apply. We don't want to, you know, deferrals tend to be granted for very unique circumstances, such as, you know, health issues, or occasionally someone gets an opportunity for employment and, you know, they want to defer graduate school for a year. I think those are very valid reasons. It's really on a case-by-case basis. And I would say if you're already asking for deferral, it may not be the right time for you to apply, because most people that want to apply are very focused on applying right now. So if deferral is already on the back burner, you may want to spend some time working then.
Another popular question is, can we apply to both SAIS Europe and SAIS DC?
Depends. If you're looking to apply to the MAIR program on both campuses, no, you're going to have to choose. Some programs we do allow for multiple applications, but each of the programs is really, really unique. So if you're undecided between two programs, I would really encourage you to reach out to the respective admissions office. For example, we have students that have been applying to both the MAIA and the MAIR, and I'm actually reaching out to them individually because it's not that applying to more programs is going to maximize your opportunity to be admitted. It actually makes you look that you don't know the difference between the programs. And so I would rather help you focus in a program that's a better fit for you. And again, for those of you submitting questions in the chat box, please submit them in the Q&A.
So another question, can we share the acceptance rates for the programs?
So we don't share the acceptance rates, but all you need to know is that we're extremely competitive. And if we admit you, it's because we believe that you have the intellectual capacity to do the work. And I think that's all you need to focus on.
Do we offer scholarships for the DIA program?
Full-time scholarships are offered, but again, this is a very different program from a PhD. So I need to highlight students that go into doctoral PhD, doctorate of philosophy. These tend to be, it's usually a program of 8, 6. They're usually hired as PhD students to then teach, and that's usually, they don't have to pay tuition because you're a PhD student. That is not the same philosophy here with DIA. A DIA is a practitioner's doctorate. There are some nominal scholarships, but it is just like the funding scheme is very much like our regular master's programs, and you would need to, it is not the same coverage for a fellowship that you would get for a doctorate in philosophy.
Another popular question is, can you briefly explain the difference between the MAIA and the MAIR?
Sure. So again, on December 15th, we have a very informative session about the MAIA degree, and I would encourage you to register for that. They're both 2-year programs. The MAIA degree is a 2-year program that's offered only in Bologna. It is a flexible curriculum that is more research focused. You can do the 2 years in Bologna, or you can come to us. You can do it. We have cooperative degrees with other universities. So you're a student at one of these cooperative degrees. You apply to us for your 2nd year. If we admit you, we recognize the credits of that cooperative. What I would say is that the coursework is very flexible. You need to do 2 economics courses over the 2-year period. Or if you come to us just for a year, in that year, you're going to have to do 2 econ classes. At the end of the 2nd year, you do have the flexibility, assuming you make a valid case, to write a thesis. The MAIR program is different. It is also a 2-year program. You could either be 2 years in DC, or you do your 1st year in Bologna, your 2nd year in Washington. The MAIR program is a little more structured. So you actually have core courses that you have to take. You have to do 1 regional area and 1 functional area. And obviously there are 2 econ tracks. So there's also either 2 courses in a policy track. So this is so those of you that have more liberal arts background, or you have to take economic courses in a more quantitative sense. So I think the question you need to ask yourself, and if you go to the MAIR website, and I'll have Bianca put that in the chat, it's very detailed. So I think you need to ask yourself, where do you want to be geographically? And what do you want your academic 2 years to look like? And hopefully by looking at the MAIR curriculum, you can see that. And if you attend the session on December 15th, you will see that's a very different program. Obviously, MAIA and MAIR students in Bologna interact with each other. They're taking classes with each other, but it is a very different experience.
Are study trips typically funded, or do SAIS students need to pay for those out of pocket?
So study trips are subsidized, but for most, they're not required, right? So I'll give you a perfect example. The Center for Constitutional Studies and Democratic Development organizes a study trip to Sarajevo over the Christmas holiday. This is an amazing experience. Students actually go to sites like Srebrenica, where they try to understand how in the 20th century such a large massacre could happen. Now, that is an amazing learning experience. If you were to go to Sarajevo on your own, you obviously have a flight and you've got to stay in a hotel. We subsidize the trip in the sense that, the housing costs very little. We try to work with students with their meals. So if you do go, the trip is at a very reduced rate, but it is out of pocket. Same thing for the career treks. Obviously, there's no fee to go and meet these employers, but you need to get there, right? So you need to get to London, you need to get to Brussels, and it's really depending. Do you go by Ryanair? Do you take a train? Do you sleep on a friend's couch? Do you sleep with your fellow classmates in an Airbnb? So you can go cheap, but it is something that obviously we try to obviously help defray the cost, but it is an external cost.
Another popular question is there a difference in the application process to SAIS Europe or SAIS DC?
So the difference is, and I'm being very general here, is there's no application fee if you apply to SAIS Europe, and we require an interview for all a full application. So if you submit an application, we contact you for an interview, okay? The interview is optional for SAIS Washington. The number of applications is just larger. So obviously you can request a conversational chat with a student representative, but the interview is a vital aspect of the SAIS Europe application. It is actually a very large component to your evaluation. But again, the majority of if you look online, the application materials are basically all the same, apart from those two things I pointed out.
Next question is, are courses at SAIS Europe going to be virtual or hybrid for students currently not in Europe?
Well, we're an open campus. So there's a very interesting article that was posted in the Washington Post. I'll invite Bianca to post that in the chat box. We've been open the whole time. We've been lucky enough to have in-person classes here at SAIS Europe. As Gabby mentioned in her presentation, obviously when students were coming to us outside of Schengen, they had a quarantine when they arrived to campus. But we've been an active campus. Our students are socially distancing with masks. We've obviously, our professors that couldn't fly in have been teaching virtually, but we are all here in person. And as of now, we're assuming we're going to be continuing under the same status quo for the spring. Of course, if you have further questions, feel free to follow up with us. Remember that the majority of the students that apply to SAIS have until April 20th or May 1st to confirm their admission, but we've been in person since August here. So,
are there any opportunities to talk to current SAIS Europe Meyer students?
So the Meyer program hasn't officially launched. Remember, that is a new curriculum that starts in September. If you have specific questions for previous Masters of Arts students, we're happy to facilitate those chats. What I would say, though, is be very specific about who you want to speak to and why. So, for example, if you were a German and you want to speak to a fellow graduate of the Masters of Arts program who's German, we're happy to put that. Or if you want to work in Latin America and you want to speak to a Masters of Arts students who ended up working in Latin America, the more specific you are, the better we can make those matches.
We have another question on the DIA program. I am currently enrolled in an MA program. Is it possible to apply for the DIA after my first year?
You can. Not every the MA program that you can apply to if you're in a master's program. It depends when your master's program's finished. So if your master's program finishes in the spring, you could apply to the DIA now. If you're accepted, it means that you would then do only 2 years because you've just done a master's. But again, it has to be a relevant master's. So if you're doing a master's in linguistics, that's not relevant. If you're doing a master's in international relations, European studies, conflict management, that's relevant enough. So it would just be something that you would need to check with us.
Another question I'm bringing from the chat. Will the interviews happen online or in person?
The interviews will happen online. We're not going to make you come to Bologna to do the interview, but we are going to do the interviews via Zoom. And so the flexibility, we will work with you, obviously, to schedule the interview at a time. We're not going to make you wake up at 4 in the morning if you're in China or in California to do an interview. So we're going to work with you to schedule a time that best fits your need and our professors.
And last question, what if you get into the Maya but want to do the Meyer?
So it depends. We've had students in the past request to change programs. It really depends. And we would, it's called a degree request change. And if you were to request a degree change, we would have a conversation with you to see about the feasibility of that. We've facilitated, but it's really on a case-by-case basis.
And that was the last of the questions that I see.
Fantastic. Well, we're a little bit over time. It is 6:20, so it's just in time for those of you that want to join us virtually for the beeper session. This has been a really extremely informative session for us. We have over 60 participants online. We hope that this has been informative. Again, if you have specific questions, feel free to send us an email at our SAIS Europe admissions inbox. This session has also been recorded, so just give us a few days to edit it, but we'll be sending it to you if you registered. I want to wish you all the best of luck with your application. Bianca, do you have any parting words for our applicants?
Yes, I really hope that I see you here in Bologna next year. I look forward to that.
Fantastic. So with that, we're going to end today's session, and we look forward to meeting you virtually and getting to hear your questions. Thank you so much.
Best of luck.
Bye-bye.